Alcohol addiction. Back in the day, drinking in Hollywood wasn't just accepted. It was practically a personality trait. If you were a star, you were expected to show up at glamorous parties, down a few cocktails, and still look flawless the next morning. But for a lot of these stars, this seemingly harmless drinking habit became a coping mechanism and morphed into an ugly addiction. A lot of them couldn't stop once the cameras turned off. In their defense, these actors were under intense pressure, constant scrutiny, brutal filming schedules, and the never-ending demand to be charming, talented, and beautiful. So the only way to cope with these pressures was through downing glass after glass until they finished the whole bottle, and they drank a lot. For some of them, they started as social drinkers, but before they knew it, alcohol wasn't just a way to have fun. It was a crutch, a way to numb the stress, loneliness, or whatever demons they were fighting. Richard Burton is a prime example. The man could outdrink just about anyone, and he knew it. To prove this point, he once admitted he'd go through 3 or 4 bottles of hard liquor a day. Not glasses, bottles. And despite being one of the greatest actors of his time, his drinking destroyed him. Professionally, personally, physically. In fact, his legendary romance with Elizabeth Taylor, even when it once burned hot, alcohol fanned the flames of every argument they had. So by the end, Burton had so much damage from drinking that even quitting couldn't undo it. But then John Barrymore is another sad case study. He was a man with charm, talent, and a serious love for the bottle. He drank so much that by the time he was in his 50s, his once brilliant memory was completely fried. So, to cover this defect, directors had to feed him lines through hidden earpieces just to get through a scene. However, his body eventually just gave out, and alcohol played a huge role in his downfall. But what's even sadder about all these is the fact that Hollywood enabled this behavior. Directors didn't care as long as the stars still brought in money. Studios even went ahead to cover up drunken arrests, messy affairs, and on-set disasters because admitting their golden stars had a problem was certainly not an option. Instead, they kept the liquor flowing, keeping the illusion alive. By the time some of these actors realized they had a problem, it was already too late. Their health was wrecked, their careers in ruins, and their reputations forever tied to their addictions. And the saddest part? If they had been in an era where people actually talked about mental health and addiction, some of them might have had a chance. But as for old Hollywood, it was all about keeping up appearances. And for many stars, that meant drinking themselves into oblivion behind closed doors. Prescription drug addiction. Let's face it, old Hollywood had a serious drug problem, except back then no one really called it that. See, when we think of drug addiction, we imagine shady dealers and back-alley transactions. But in Tinseltown, the drugs came in fancy little bottles, prescribed by doctors on the studio payroll. And that made it all seem perfectly normal. Actors were expected to work brutal hours, sometimes filming for 15+ hours a day, then going straight to press events or photo shoots. Exhaustion wasn't an option, so the studios had a solution. They handed out amphetamines, also known as speed, to keep actors energized and sharp. But once the high wore off and they were too wired to sleep, barbiturates, which were heavy-duty sleeping pills, were the answer. And just like that, a vicious cycle started. Pills to wake up, pills to sleep, repeat. These weren't just take-as-needed situations. They were taking them every single day. Judy Garland falls into this category. You see, the studio signed her when she was just a kid, and from the moment she became a star, they controlled every aspect of her life, including what went into her body. They forced her to take amphetamines to keep her weight down and give her energy for those high-energy performances. And then, when she was buzzing too hard to sleep, barbiturates was the answer. She spent her entire career trapped in that cycle, and by the time she realized how deep in she was, it was too late. She was completely dependent, but Marilyn Monroe's case was probably even worse. She was constantly fed pills to deal with anxiety, depression, and the pressure of being Marilyn. Her doctors kept her stocked with sedatives and barbiturates, some even mixing medications that should never be combined. The more stressed she became, the more she relied on them, and we all know how her story ended. Again, Hollywood knew this was happening, but instead of helping, they just kept refilling prescriptions. If a star was performing, they didn't care what it took to keep them going. It wasn't until years later that people started recognizing how destructive this cycle was. Today, we talk a lot more about addiction and mental health, but back then, if you were struggling, you were just supposed to tough it out, even if it meant swallowing a handful of pills every single day just to function. Eating disorders. Talent was never enough to make it in Hollywood. You also had to look perfect. And sadly, the pressure to look perfect was more on the actresses. That meant being impossibly thin. And to make it even worse, studios didn't care if a star was naturally slim or not. If they wanted to stay in the spotlight, they had to fit the image, no matter what it took. And to be clear, it took a lot. Extreme dieting, laxative abuse, and forced starvation. These weren't exceptions. They were the norm. Studios would flat out tell their actresses to lose weight or lose their career. Some stars were even put on brutal, calorie-restricted diets, while others were pushed onto amphetamines, which killed appetite to keep them rail thin. Joan Crawford, for example, was known for her razor-sharp cheekbones and perfect figure, but keeping it that way was a result of toxic obsession. She followed strict diets, measuring every meal down to the ounce, and was reportedly terrified of gaining even a single pound. There were stories about her eating nothing but cottage cheese and crackers for days, and if she ever slipped up, she'd go into overdrive to fix it, fasting, over-exercising, or using laxatives. Then there's Audrey Hepburn, who had long been admired for her delicate frame. Many assumed she was just naturally that thin, but over the years, stories surfaced that suggested otherwise. Some believed her childhood malnutrition during World War II left her with lifelong struggles with food. Others say she may have developed an eating disorder due to the insane Hollywood pressure to stay ultra-thin. Either way, she spent her entire career being scrutinized for her size, praised when she was tiny, criticized if she gained even a little weight. And this was happening to almost every actress in the industry. If a star's weight fluctuated, the studios would put them on strict crash diets or even send them away until they were camera-ready again. Some actresses would survive on little more than grapefruit, black coffee, and cigarettes just to keep the pounds off. Others turned to laxatives or even purging to maintain their figures. Sadly, this never stopped. The pressure to be impossibly thin didn't just mess up these women during their careers. It followed them for life. In fact, many stars struggled with body image issues long after Hollywood was done with them, trapped in the mindset that gaining weight was the ultimate failure. And while today's industry has gotten a little better about body diversity, the echoes of old Hollywood's toxic beauty standards are still felt. The difference? At least now we actually talk about it. Back then, these women suffered in silence, their pain hidden behind the flawless images the studios worked so hard to create. Gambling. When people think of Hollywood vices, gambling isn't always the first thing that comes to mind. But trust me, it was a huge problem. For some stars, the thrill of winning, or more often, losing, became just as dangerous as alcohol or drugs. And because these were Hollywood's biggest names, they weren't betting pocket change, they were throwing away fortunes. Casinos, horse races, underground poker games, you name it, Hollywood stars were hooked. And with their insane salaries, they could afford to lose big, at least for a while. But the thing about gambling is that the house always wins. And some of these stars had to learn the hard way. The king of Hollywood wasn't just a legend on screen. He was also a notorious gambler. He loved horse racing and poker, and while he made a fortune from movies, he lost a ridiculous amount at the betting tables. The guy lived for high-stakes games, and if luck wasn't on his side, well, he could always make more movies to cover the losses. Sadly, Frank Sinatra isn't left out. He was so deep in the gambling world that he practically lived in Vegas. He'd drop thousands in a single night, sometimes winning big, but just as often losing it all. And because Sinatra had ties to some very interesting people like the mob, he wasn't just playing against regular casino owners, he was rubbing elbows with gangsters who expected their debts to be paid. Let's just say, if Sinatra ever owed the wrong people money, he had to pay up fast. And speaking of mob connections, George Raft was one of the biggest gambling addicts in Hollywood. He was tight with actual gangsters, so his love for high-stakes bets wasn't just a hobby, it was a lifestyle. He lost so much money that, by the time his acting career slowed down, he was completely broke. Despite once being one of Hollywood's highest-paid stars, gambling wiped him out. In hindsight, Hollywood and the mob were way too close for comfort. Many casinos, racetracks, and underground poker games were mob-controlled, which meant some actors weren't just gambling away their money. They were getting tangled up with very dangerous people, and if they racked up too much debt, let's just say some favors needed to be repaid. Gambling didn't get the same public attention as alcoholism or drug addiction, but it destroyed just as many careers and emptied just as many bank accounts. Some stars lost everything before they even realized they had a problem. Secret parties. We all know old Hollywood had a lot of secrets, but let's be real. Some of the biggest ones happened behind closed doors at those infamous parties. And I'm not talking about your average fancy dinner gatherings. These were full-blown, no-rules, anything-goes parties where stars let loose in ways the public could never imagine. There were wild rumors about orgies, secret rooms, and bizarre fetishes that went way beyond the usual affairs. Some of these parties were so over the top that even the most scandalous stars walked away shocked. And of course, Hollywood's biggest names were always involved. Actresses who seemed so elegant and untouchable on screen had reputations for jumping into bed with anyone who showed interest. Other actors, directors, producers, even each other. Some did it for fun, some did it for power, and some just did it because, well, they could. The studios hushed it all up, but if you were in the right circles, you knew who was with who, and trust me, the list was long. And the actors were just as bad, if not worse. Some of the most famous leading men had insatiable appetites, constantly looking for the next thrill, the next conquest, the next anything that would top their last experience. And a lot of them weren't just into your everyday stuff. Some of Hollywood's biggest names had very specific, very extreme fetishes, and they would go way out of their way to satisfy them. Then there were the real underground rumors, the stories about stars getting caught up in things so wild and taboo that even the most hardened gossip columnists wouldn't dare print them. Hollywood's elite had their own secret clubs, private estates, and hidden parties where anything and everything was on the table. And because the studios needed to keep their biggest stars squeaky clean, they spent millions covering up arrests, scandals, and even potential blackmail situations. But of course, not everyone escaped unscathed. Some stars took things too far and got hit with lawsuits, secret paternity scandals, and stories that refused to stay buried. And others? Well, let's just say some careers mysteriously disappeared overnight. Hollywood may have been built on glamour and talent, but behind the scenes, it was just as much about who you knew, what you did, and what secrets you could keep. Smoking and caffeine. In old Hollywood, everyone smoked. Everyone. It wasn't just a habit, it was practically a requirement. Directors smoked on set, actors smoked between takes, and actresses used cigarettes as props to look sophisticated or mysterious. You'd be hard-pressed to find a movie from the golden age that didn't feature someone lighting up. And because it was seen as glamorous, no one thought twice about chain smoking. Studios even had deals with cigarette companies promoting smoking as the ultimate cool factor. The result? A whole generation of Hollywood icons became full-blown addicts. Take Humphrey Bogart. The man's voice was pure gravel, and it wasn't just from playing tough guys. He smoked like a chimney, reportedly puffing through several packs a day. And Bette Davis? Same deal. She had a signature husky voice, but that wasn't acting. That was years of chain smoking doing the talking. Even Clark Gable, the epitome of old-school Hollywood masculinity, was hooked. Eventually, the habit caught up with them, and many of these stars developed serious health problems because of it. But smoking wasn't the only addiction that Hollywood pretended wasn't a problem. Caffeine was right up there, too. Directors demanded long hours, studios overworked their stars, and actors needed to stay alert on set. Their solution? Ridiculous amounts of coffee. Some practically lived on caffeine, drinking cup after cup just to keep going. By today's standards, smoking and caffeine might not seem as scandalous as drugs, drinking, or wild parties. But make no mistake, these were full-blown addictions. And just like the others, they left plenty of damage in their wake. Plastic surgeries. Back then, plastic surgery wasn't as advanced as it is today. There were no subtle tweaks. These procedures were painful, risky, and often left visible scars. But for many actresses, The fear of aging or being replaced by a younger star was worse than any surgical knife. Take Rita Hayworth, for example. The woman was a natural beauty, but the studios decided she needed a full-on transformation to become a star. Her biggest procedure? Electrolysis to change her entire hairline. Sounds harmless? It wasn't. This wasn't just a quick zap, it was a painful, years-long process that involved literally burning off hair follicles to make her forehead appear higher. On top of that, she had her hair dyed red to complete the studio's vision of the perfect starlet. Then there was Joan Crawford, one of Hollywood's biggest legends, who was also obsessed with staying young. She reportedly underwent multiple facelifts, and when that wasn't enough, she resorted to extreme at-home beauty treatments. One of her go-to methods? Dipping her face in ice water every morning to tighten her skin. And let's not forget the rumor that she had her back teeth removed to make her cheekbones appear more defined. Whether true or not, it shows just how far Hollywood stars were willing to go for beauty. The scary part? These women didn't really have a choice. If they wanted to keep working, they had to keep up appearances. Literally. Studios picked apart their faces, bodies, and weight like it was a business investment, which to them it was. And since getting surgery was still seen as shameful back then, most stars had to keep it secret, even when the scars and side effects were impossible to hide. Today, plastic surgery is out in the open, and stars actually talk about it. But back then, it was just another Hollywood addiction, one that came with a scalpel instead of a bottle. Reckless spending. If there's one thing old Hollywood stars knew how to do, it was spend money like there was no tomorrow. Lavish mansions, designer clothes, luxury cars, jewelry, servants. If it was expensive, they wanted it. And the thing about fame is it makes you feel like the money will never stop coming in, until of course it does. Back in the studio era, actors made big bucks, but they weren't exactly taught how to manage it, and the studios didn't really care. As long as their stars looked glamorous and successful, no one asked where all that money was actually going. Judy Garland, for instance, made millions during her career, yet by the time she passed away, she was broke. Her problem was she couldn't stop spending. She loved shopping and would go on massive spending sprees, buying clothes, jewelry, and gifts for friends. She also had a weakness for luxury homes and hotels, but she never paid attention to the bills. On top of that, she had multiple ex-husbands who drained her bank account, either through expensive divorces or just spending her money as if it were theirs. By the end of her life, she was performing in tiny venues just to pay the rent. But Mickey Rooney's case is probably worse. As one of Hollywood's biggest stars in the 30s and 40s, he made the modern equivalent of hundreds of millions of dollars. But somehow, he died practically penniless. His addiction was gambling, bad business deals, and expensive marriages. Rooney married 8 times, and each wife came with costly divorces, alimony payments, and extravagant spending habits. He also loved gambling, throwing away huge chunks of his fortune at casinos and horse races. And it wasn't just them. Many Hollywood stars ended up completely broke, either because they spent recklessly or because they trusted the wrong people to handle their money. Studios took advantage, agents took their cut, and by the time these actors realized what was happening, there was nothing left. The saddest part? A lot of these stars had to beg for work in their later years just to survive. Some even had to rely on charity from fellow actors or the Screen Actors Guild to help them pay for medical bills. Hollywood might have made them rich, but it sure didn't teach them how to stay rich. Workaholism. For some stars, the biggest addiction wasn't alcohol, drugs, or gambling. It was work. The Hollywood grind never stopped, and many actors became so obsessed with staying on top that they ran themselves into the ground. And of course, the studios loved it. Back in the golden age, actors weren't exactly free agents. They were locked into strict contracts with big studios like MGM, Warner Brothers, and Paramount. That meant they didn't get to choose their projects. They worked when and how much the studio told them to. And for the biggest stars, that meant non-stop filming, promotional tours, interviews, and rehearsals, all while being expected to look flawless. Some actors thrived under this pressure, others broke down. Take Charlie Chaplin, for example. The man was a genius, but he was also a complete perfectionist. He would shoot the same scene hundreds of times, obsessing over the tiniest details. His classic film City Lights took almost 3 years to finish because he kept redoing scenes. Co-stars were driven insane by his constant retakes, but he wouldn't settle for anything less than perfection. Then Bette Davis, one of the hardest working actresses in history. She never stopped, sometimes filming 3 to 4 movies a year, and these weren't quick shoots. These were months-long productions with grueling 16-hour days, no real breaks, and constant pressure. She fought with studio heads because she wanted better roles, but she was also terrified of fading into obscurity, so she worked and worked and worked until her body couldn't keep up anymore. And of course, we can't forget Judy Garland. She was forced to work from the time she was a child, shuffled between movies, concerts, and publicity appearances with no rest and no escape. The stress was so bad that MGM gave her amphetamines to keep her awake and barbiturates to make her sleep. By the time she was in her 20s, she was completely dependent on pills just to function. For many stars, the fear of being replaced kept them working long past their limits. They didn't take breaks, they didn't slow down, and eventually it caught up with them, whether through health problems, mental breakdowns, or just sheer exhaustion. Hollywood never cared about their well-being, only their box office numbers. And for a lot of these stars, the addiction to work was just as dangerous as any substance. Like any other human being, some of your favorite Hollywood legends had secret habits they were obsessed with. Some were too embarrassed to do them in public, and others just enjoyed the privacy of their addictions. But make no mistake, some of these addictions would shock you to your core. Clark Gable, chewing gum. He may have been an amazing actor, but he just couldn't get enough of chewing gum. It was like his secret weapon. Every time he felt nervous or needed a little boost, out came a stick of gum. He'd chew like his life depended on it, sometimes even before a big scene. The funny part? There were times he'd walk onto set, ready to deliver a killer line, and realize halfway through that he was still chewing away. Ava Gardner, Coca-Cola. Ava Gardner was totally hooked on Coca-Cola. Like, she couldn't go a day without it. Her fridge was always crammed with bottles, and she made sure it was ice cold, just the way she liked it. Forget champagne or fancy cocktails. For Ava, Coke was the drink of choice. She used to joke that it was her version of bubbly, though let's be real, she probably loved it way more. If you ever caught her relaxing at home, odds are there was a Coke in her hand. James Dean, fast cars. He had a serious need for speed. Fast cars were his thing. He wasn't just a casual car guy, he lived for the thrill of racing and pushing the limits. Dean loved the adrenaline rush, the roar of the engine, the blur of the world as he zipped by. It was like he felt most alive when he was behind the wheel of a powerful machine. Sadly, his love for speed was also his downfall. That fateful day in 1955 when his Porsche 550 Spyder crashed ended his life far too soon. A legend lost to the very thing he loved most. Bette Davis, cigarettes. This woman smoked like it was her full-time job. Seriously, she was always lighting up. On set, off set, in interviews, you name it, she had a cigarette in hand. She didn't care who saw or what anyone thought. Smoking was just her thing. It's no surprise her voice had that iconic, raspy edge. It was practically marinated in tobacco. Rumor has it directors sometimes had to yell, "Cut," because her puffing added too much smoke to the scene. Marilyn Monroe, sleeping pills. The toll fame takes is indeed a big one. Marilyn had a tough time getting any shut-eye, and sleeping pills became her crutch. With her mind constantly racing, whether from the pressures of fame, heartbreak, or just her own restless thoughts, she'd turn to pills to finally get some peace. But here's the thing. Fame isn't a magic fix for inner struggles. For Marilyn, it was the opposite. The brighter the spotlight, the darker her nights seemed to get. Frank Sinatra, ice cream. After almost every show, he'd indulge in a scoop or two, or three. It didn't matter how late it was, ice cream was his ultimate comfort food. Some folks turned to a nightcap, but for old Blue Eyes, it was all about that creamy, sugary goodness. He even had his favorite spots where he'd sneak off for a cone or a sundae. It's kind of charming, isn't it? Judy Garland, pills. Her journey with pep pills started when she was just a kid in the Hollywood machine. Her handlers gave her these pills to keep her energized for long rehearsals and shoots, and then sleeping pills to knock her out at night. It was a vicious cycle that she couldn't break free from. The pressure to always be on, to stay thin, and to perform at her peak left her hooked. Marlon Brando, food. This actor didn't just love food, he lived for it. The guy had a legendary appetite and wasn't shy about it. Midnight burger runs were totally his thing. He'd hop in the car and cruise to his favorite spots like it was the ultimate adventure. And it wasn't just about the burgers. Brando loved indulging in everything from hearty Italian meals to sweet treats. His love for food became as iconic as his acting. Elizabeth Taylor, diamonds. Diamonds, emeralds, sapphires. If it sparkled, she had to have it. Her collection was legendary, with pieces like the Krupp diamond and the Taj Mahal necklace making headlines. She didn't just wear jewels. She treated them like prized possessions, each one with its own story. Honestly, it was like she was collecting Pokemon cards, but way more glamorous. Liz once said, "Big girls need big diamonds," and boy, did she live by that. Her love for bling wasn't just a habit, it was practically her trademark. Humphrey Bogart, chess. He was totally hooked on chess, couldn't get enough of it. Whether he was on set or just hanging out, Humphrey Bogart would challenge anyone who came within arm's reach. No one was safe, not even the crew. During breaks in filming, you'd catch him setting up a board and diving into a game. He didn't care if he was in the middle of a scene or on a lunch break. If there was a game going, he was in. Joan Crawford, cleanliness. Her love for cleaning was straight up obsessive. She didn't just tidy up, she scrubbed floors until they shined like they were made of glass. People used to say she could spend hours scrubbing, polishing, and making sure everything was in perfect order. It went way beyond your typical housekeeping. For Joan, it was like a ritual. Errol Flynn, danger. Danger was practically his middle name. Whether he was sailing into a storm or getting tangled up in a scandal, he chased excitement like it was a paycheck. The man didn't just flirt with danger, he dove headfirst into it. His adventures off-screen were as thrilling, and sometimes as reckless, as the swashbuckling roles he played. From close calls at sea to some very questionable decisions in his personal life, Flynn was all about pushing limits. Lucille Ball, coffee. If there was a liquid that powered her wild energy, it was coffee. Lucille Ball could down gallons of the stuff, and she needed it to keep up with her non-stop high-energy performances. From the early mornings on set to late-night rehearsals, coffee was her fuel of choice. It wasn't just a casual cup here and there. This was full-on, keep the caffeine coming territory. In fact, you could say that coffee was as much a part of her routine as her impeccable comedic timing. Charlie Chaplin, younger women. Chaplin's preference for young women was about as public as his famous tramp character. It was no secret, and frankly, it made headlines almost as often as his films did. Chaplin had a habit of dating much younger women, and the press didn't shy away from shining a spotlight on it. In fact, his personal life seemed to generate as much gossip as his brilliant on-screen career. Despite his genius in the film world, his relationships often raised eyebrows, but Chaplin never seemed to care much about public opinion. He was, after all, a man who lived life on his own terms. Katharine Hepburn, swimming. Diving into icy waters every day? For Kate, it wasn't just a way to wake up, it was her form of therapy. Whether it was the cold ocean or a chilled pool, she swam through it all like it was the most natural thing in the world. No matter the weather, she'd jump in, letting the freezing temperatures wash away the stress of the day. For Kate, the water wasn't just for exercise, it was her mental reset button. Orson Wells, alcohol. When stress hit, Orson Wells didn't reach for a yoga mat, he reached for a stiff drink. It became his go-to move whenever the pressure of fame, filmmaking, or life in general got to be too much. A glass of something strong was always within arm's reach, and it was a habit that stuck with him throughout his career. Whether he was battling the chaos of the film industry or just trying to unwind, booze was his constant companion. Vivien Leigh, tranquilizers. The pressures of stardom weren't just about fame and fortune. It was a battle for peace of mind. For Vivien, that meant turning to tranquilizers to calm her anxiety. The constant stress of being in the public eye, coupled with personal challenges, pushed her to rely on these pills to get through the day. They became her way of coping, though they couldn't take away the deeper struggles. Gary Cooper, hunting. The thrill of the hunt wasn't just something Coop enjoyed. It was an obsession. Gary Cooper spent as much time in the wild as he did on screen, chasing down his next adventure in nature. Whether it was tracking game or just immersing himself in the great outdoors, he was hooked. The rush of the hunt was his escape, his way of finding peace away from Hollywood's chaos. Rita Hayworth, chocolate. Chocolate was her silent co-star, always there when the cameras weren't rolling. Between takes, she'd sneak bites of the sweet treat, finding comfort in its rich, velvety goodness. It was her little indulgence, something that helped her power through long days of filming. While the world saw her as the glamorous movie star, chocolate was her down-to-earth secret, a simple pleasure that kept her grounded. Fred Astaire, golf. Whenever Fred wasn't rehearsing, you could find him dancing his way to the golf course. Yep, he'd literally bust a move as he made his way to the green, turning every step into a little performance. Golf was his thing, but he didn't just stroll to it like anyone else. He brought the rhythm with him. Whether it was a happy shuffle or a full-on tap routine, Fred turned his love for dancing into a way to stay loose and have fun. Greta Garbo, isolation. Solitude was Garbo's true addiction. She craved it like others crave fame or fortune, retreating from the chaos of Hollywood to protect her peace. While everyone else was chasing the spotlight, she was all about escaping it. Garbo loved her alone time, and she'd go to great lengths to find it, whether it meant disappearing from the public eye for weeks or months. She'd take long, quiet walks or hide away in remote places just so she could breathe. Jean Harlow, Bleach. Harlow had a pretty hilarious take on her obsession with beauty. She joked that bleaching her hair was her real addiction. She was famous for her platinum blonde locks, and to keep them looking perfect, she bleached her hair constantly. It wasn't just a beauty routine, it was practically a full-time commitment. Jean would go through hours of treatments, all in the name of maintaining that iconic bombshell look. Gene Kelly, control. It wasn't a substance that had him hooked. It was perfection. Gene Kelly was obsessed with getting every single detail just right. Whether it was a dance routine, a film scene, or even a small movement, he micromanaged it to the point of perfection. The guy was a perfectionist through and through, constantly refining his craft, never satisfied unless it was flawless. He pushed himself and everyone around him to deliver nothing less than the best. Mae West, perfume. She wasn't just about wit and curves. She had a secret weapon that left everyone captivated. Perfume. Mae West would layer herself in it, practically bathing in the stuff, and she swore it was the key to her undeniable charm. To her, it wasn't just a scent. It was an extension of her persona, something that lingered long after she left the room. She believed it played a huge part in her allure, adding that final touch of magic that made her unforgettable. Carrie Grant, LSD. In the name of self-discovery, Carrie Grant dove into the world of LSD. He didn't just take it for kicks, he genuinely believed it was life-changing. After experimenting with the drug in the 1950s, Grant said it helped him tap into parts of his mind he'd never known existed, offering him clarity and a deeper understanding of himself. For the suave, charming star who seemed to have it all, LSD became a tool for inner exploration. Barbara Stanwyck, horses. Every spare second Barbara had, she'd be on horseback. It wasn't just a hobby, it was her escape. The rush of riding was her way of getting away from the chaos of Hollywood and finding peace in the open air. Whether she was galloping across fields or simply taking a quiet ride through the countryside, horseback riding gave her a sense of freedom she couldn't get anywhere else. Audrey Hepburn, pasta. Audrey Hepburn had a serious love affair with pasta, especially spaghetti. She openly admitted that she couldn't resist a good plate of it, no matter what. For someone so elegant and graceful, it might surprise you that one of her biggest pleasures was something as simple as pasta. But hey, who could blame her? There was something comforting about it, something that made her feel grounded amidst the glamorous world she lived in. James Kagny, dancing. He was so hooked on dancing that he'd break into tap moves between scenes. Whether it was during a quick break or just while waiting for the next shot, you could count on him to shuffle his feet and tap out a rhythm. It wasn't just something he did on screen. It was part of his everyday life. Kagny didn't need music. His feet did the talking. Lauren Bacall, cigarettes. That husky, sultry voice that made her unforgettable wasn't just natural. It was fueled by a heavy smoking habit. The deep, throaty tone she was famous for came from years of cigarettes, and it became one of her most distinctive features. Bacall even admitted that the rasp was something she developed over time with smoking, giving her voice that signature seductive sound. While it certainly added to her allure, it also came with its costs. Paul Newman, racing. Hollywood stardom was great, but for Paul, his real addiction was car racing. He lived for the thrill of the track, pushing his limits in a way that Hollywood couldn't quite match. When he wasn't on set, you could find him behind the wheel, tearing up the roads and feeding that need for speed. Racing wasn't just a hobby for him. It was a passion, a way of life. The rush of the race was something he couldn't get enough of, and it became his true obsession, even more than the movies that made him famous. Sophia Lauren, pizza. Did you know that Sophia Lauren credited her famous curves to her love for pizza? I mean, how relatable is that? While most people might worry about their waistline, Sophia fully embraced her love for food, especially pizza. She said it was her secret to staying curvy and confident. And let's be honest, who wouldn't want to have the same relationship with pizza? It wasn't just about indulging, it was about enjoying life and embracing your body the way it is. Clark Gable, cologne. He doused himself in cologne so often that he earned a reputation as the best-smelling man in Hollywood. It wasn't just about a splash here and there. He made sure his scent was unforgettable. Whether it was during shoots or when he was out and about, his cologne became part of his signature. People couldn't help but notice the distinct, fresh smell that lingered after he left the room. Natalie Wood, shopping. She was completely hooked on retail therapy, buying clothes like they were going out of style. If there was a sale, you could bet she'd be first in line, scooping up everything that caught her eye. It wasn't just about fashion, it was a need, a way to feel in control in a world that often felt overwhelming. She'd shop as if those gorgeous dresses and chic outfits might vanish overnight. And honestly, who could blame her? Spencer Tracy, alcohol. Whether it was a late-night binge or just a little too much celebrating, Spencer often found himself battling a hangover while trying to focus on his lines. Despite the tough mornings, he kept his reputation intact and powered through. But his love for a good drink was no secret. Hollywood's golden age certainly had its share of party animals, and Spencer was one of the stars who truly embodied that wild side. Myrna Loy, dogs. She had a serious obsession with dogs, adopting more than she could handle. It was like a never-ending parade of pups at her place, each one cuter than the last. She couldn't resist rescuing every dog that caught her eye, and soon enough, her home was filled to the brim with furry friends. While it started as a love for animals, it quickly became a bit overwhelming, with the constant care and attention they all needed. Rock Hudson, Sugar. He had a major sweet tooth and was rarely seen without candy in hand. Whether it was a quick sugar fix between takes or just a little indulgence during downtime, candy was his constant companion. It wasn't just about a treat now and then. He was pretty much always munching on something sweet, and he didn't try to hide it. From chocolates to hard candies, if it had sugar, it was his weakness. Anne Margaret, motorcycles. She loved motorcycles almost as much as her co-stars, and that's saying something. Anne Margaret didn't just admire bikes, she was all about the ride. Whether she was zooming around town or taking a spin on set, motorcycles gave her a sense of freedom she couldn't get enough of. She even became known for her love of riding, which was just as intense as her on-screen presence. It was a perfect match for her high-energy, fearless personality. Gregory Peck, books. He couldn't get enough of reading, devouring novels whenever he had a break on set. While other stars might relax between scenes with a drink or chatting, Gregory was usually buried in a book, completely absorbed in another world. It wasn't just about passing time, it was his way of staying grounded, feeding his mind while the cameras weren't rolling. Shirley Temple, dolls. Even as an adult, she couldn't shake her love for dolls, a throwback to her child star days. What started as a cute collection during her early years in Hollywood stuck with her long after the cameras stopped rolling. She had shelves filled with them, each doll a little piece of nostalgia, reminding her of simpler times. It wasn't just about collecting, it was a way for her to hold on to her childhood innocence, even in the chaotic world of fame. Debbie Reynolds, collecting memorabilia. She ended up with one of the biggest collections of Hollywood memorabilia, and it wasn't just because she liked the idea of it. Debbie seriously loved the history of Tinseltown. Her collection had everything, from vintage movie posters to costumes and personal items from classic stars. It wasn't just a hobby for her. It was like holding on to pieces of Hollywood's golden era. Every item had a story, and Debbie treated them like treasures. It was her way of connecting with the magic of the movies and the legends who made them. Clint Eastwood, jazz music. He wasn't just a fan, he was seriously into it, often collecting rare jazz records and attending live performances. In fact, some of his early roles were influenced by his love for the genre, and it was said that the rhythm and improvisation in jazz inspired his own acting style, especially in his iconic roles. Even with all the action-packed tough guy roles, Clint always made sure to keep jazz close to his heart. Bing Crosby, golf. His addiction here was legendary. He didn't just play the game, he lived and breathed it. Bing was often found on the course, perfecting his swing and enjoying the serenity it brought him. He was known to skip out on Hollywood events just to hit a few rounds. Golf was his form of relaxation, a place where he could escape the pressures of fame and just focus on the game. His love for the sport was as well known as his voice. Tony Curtis, women. Tony Curtis was a self-confessed womanizer who never seemed to settle down. Jane Mansfield, Pink. Jane loved Pink so much, she dyed everything she owned, including her poodles. Henry Fonda, fishing. Fonda was addicted to fishing, often disappearing to catch trout. Grace Kelly, hats. Grace couldn't resist buying hats, owning more than she could ever wear. Lana Turner, shopping. Lana's addiction to shopping rivaled Natalie Wood's. She always had the latest fashion. Dean Martin, whiskey. Dean's love for whiskey wasn't just a Rat Pack persona, it was real. Joan Fontaine, gossip. Joan was addicted to gossip, stirring the pot in classic Hollywood circles. There is no telling what people are up to behind closed doors when no one is watching. But when it comes to the Hollywood stars on this list, there is no doubt that the golden age of Hollywood had its fair share of nastiness and pure lust. From being intimate with both men and women, to openly admitting seeking help from the nympho addiction, some of these stars knew they had a problem, but for others, they hid behind the veil of marriage. Regardless, They all had the same thing in common. They simply could not resist a good time in the sheets. Pamela Anderson. This amazing star has never been one to hold back when it comes to talking about her love life. Back in her younger days, she admitted in an interview that her libido was, in her words, uncontrollable. And honestly, it's not hard to see why people took notice. She wasn't just famous for her role on Baywatch, but also for her high-profile relationships with rock stars like Tommy Lee and Kid Rock. Even as she got older, Pamela didn't shy away from the subject. She embraced her image as a sensual symbol and kept things playful, sharing that she still enjoyed adding a little spice to her relationships. Her openness about physical intimacy and love has kept her in the spotlight as one of the most talked-about stars when it comes to libido. But here's the thing. Pamela's carefree and unapologetic attitude about her sexuality isn't just a phase or an act. It's been a core part of who she is from the start. She's never let society's expectations box her in, and that's probably why fans have always been so fascinated by her. Love her or not, you've got to admit, Pamela Anderson has always danced to the beat of her own drum. Vivien Leigh. She was far more complex than the glamorous image she portrayed on screen as Scarlett O'Hara. Beneath the surface of her dazzling career lay a life filled with personal struggles, heartbreak, and battles that would have overwhelmed many. Her relationships were often a focal point for public gossip, particularly her well-known affairs with co-stars like Robert Taylor and Peter Finch, even during her marriage to Laurence Olivier. While the tabloids painted her as scandalous, the truth of her life was far more nuanced and deeply human. Vivien's real challenge wasn't the judgment of others. It was the battle within herself. She suffered from bipolar disorder, a condition that was poorly understood at the time. It led to extreme mood swings that impacted her relationships, career, and overall well-being. Her struggles became even more pronounced after a devastating miscarriage in 1945, an event that many believe intensified her emotional pain and left scars that never fully healed. Her health challenges didn't stop there. The book, Reframing Vivien Leigh, details how she suffered from illnesses throughout her life, which added another layer of difficulty to an already turbulent existence. These health issues, along with the rumors and speculation they stirred, created an image of a troubled star in the public eye. But behind the headlines was a woman fighting battles most would never understand. Despite it all, Vivien remained remarkably resilient. She continued to pour herself into her craft, delivering performances that captivated audiences and cemented her place in cinematic history. On stage and screen, she exuded a magnetic presence that few could match, even as she wrestled with her inner demons. Elizabeth Taylor. Her love life was always making headlines, and for good reason. She got married 8 times, to 7 different men, and didn't hold back when it came to following her heart. The press loved to slap labels on her, calling her everything from unpredictable to wild, especially when her romance with Richard Burton hit the scene. That relationship was Hollywood drama at its peak. Both Elizabeth and Richard were married to other people when their affair started, which only added fuel to the media frenzy. But their connection was undeniable, and their on-again, off-again romance became one of the most talked-about love stories of all time. They had fiery arguments, grand reunions, and moments so passionate they could have been straight out of one of their movies. The thing about Elizabeth, though, is she never apologized for living her life the way she wanted. She once said, "I don't regret anything I've ever done," and she meant it. She wasn't about to let public opinion dictate how she lived or who she loved. Elizabeth Taylor wasn't just a star, she was a force of nature. She loved deeply, made bold choices, and owned every moment of it. That's what made her unforgettable, not just her beauty or talent, but the way she lived life on her terms. Rita Hayworth. Her love life was just as adventurous as her Hollywood career. Known for her beauty and elegance, she had a magnetic charm that made her one of the most sought-after stars of her time. But Rita's personal life was as dramatic as any of her films, filled with passion, heartbreak, and headline-making romances. She was married 5 times, each relationship capturing public attention in its own way. Her second husband, Orson Wells, was a creative genius, best known for Citizen Kane. Together, they were seen as a power couple, blending Hollywood glamour with artistic brilliance. But their marriage was far from perfect, and like many of her relationships, it didn't last. Then came Prince Ali Khan, the dashing son of the Aga Khan. Their affair caused an international stir. Rita was already a massive star, and Ali was one of the most eligible bachelors in the world. When they got married, it seemed like a real-life fairy tale, the movie star and the prince. But even that storybook romance had its troubles. Their relationship was marked by intense highs and lows, and they eventually divorced. Rita wasn't just someone who fell in love. She dove headfirst into it, living with passion and following her heart wherever it led her. But that kind of intensity came with its challenges. She once said, "Every man I knew fell in love with Gilda and woke up with me," referring to her famous role in the movie Gilda. It was a bittersweet reflection on how people often saw her as the glamorous character on screen rather than the real woman behind it. Beyond the rumors and gossip, Rita Hayworth was a deeply human figure. She loved fiercely and openly, and she carried herself with grace even when things didn't work out. While her personal life was far from smooth, it's also what made her so relatable. Warren Beatty. While his career took off after the Golden Age, his romantic life was just as much a part of his legend as his acting. He was known for dating some of the biggest stars of the time, with his list of lovers reportedly numbering in the hundreds. Beatty didn't just have a few flings. He was deeply involved with many women, including major names like Natalie Wood, Julie Christie, and even Madonna in the 80s. His charm and looks kept him in the headlines, but it was his personality that really fueled the gossip. Beatty had a reputation for being confident and captivating, always able to win over whoever he set his sights on. His romantic relationships often became public spectacles, and he was rarely far from the tabloids. For years, he seemed to live in the spotlight, balancing his acting career with a relentless pursuit of romance. Despite his womanizing reputation, Beatty eventually settled down with actress Annette Bening, a move that surprised many who had grown used to his bachelor lifestyle. But even then, the stories of his past relationships continued to follow him, ensuring that his place in Hollywood history was as much about his personal life as it was about his films. Marlon Brando. Known not just for his incredible acting, but also for his wild, unpredictable love life. With his smoldering looks and undeniable talent, Brando quickly became a heartthrob, but his personal life was as intense as his performances on screen. He had numerous relationships with both men and women, making headlines for his openness and rebellious nature. Brando wasn't shy about his romantic interests, and over the years he fathered 11 children with different partners. His love life was as complicated and unpredictable as his roles, with many ups and downs. From his passionate relationships to his unorthodox lifestyle, Brando lived life on his own terms, constantly challenging Hollywood norms. Despite his many romantic entanglements, Brando was known for being deeply private about his personal affairs, leaving many details about his relationships to speculation. Still, his love life became as much a part of his legendary status as his groundbreaking performances, proving that he was not only a force on screen but off it too. Clark Gable. Often called the King of Hollywood, he was just as well known for his off-screen romantic life as he was for his iconic film roles. With his charm, good looks, and rugged appeal, Gable captured the hearts of women both on and off the screen. He was married 5 times, with each marriage making headlines in its own right. But it was his extramarital affair with actress Loretta Young that truly made waves. Their relationship resulted in a secret love child, a scandal that Hollywood tried to keep under wraps. Despite their affair happening while they were both married to other people, Young kept the child's existence a secret for many years, with Gable only acknowledging his daughter much later in life. This secret love affair and its fallout added a layer of complexity to Gable's otherwise polished public image. Gable's love life was often filled with drama, but it only added to the mystique of his public persona. His relationships were just as intense as his famous roles, and the stories behind them became as much a part of his life as the films that made him a legend. Zaza Gabor. A lot of people will go to great lengths to hide who they really are, especially when the rest of the world around them will not accept it. But not Zaza Gabor. This woman was bold, fearless, and unapologetic about her free-spirited lifestyle. With a personal life that kept the tabloids buzzing and known for her 9 marriages, she certainly wasn't shy about her love life. Each of her marriages seemed to be more high-profile than the last, and her relationships were often just as public. But it wasn't just her marriages that had people talking. Her flirtatious personality and quick wit made her one of Hollywood's most charming and talked-about stars. Gabor loved the attention, and she knew how to work the spotlight. Her reputation as a woman who was always in search of love and excitement was solidified by the countless rumored affairs and passionate relationships she had over the years. Zaza made no apologies for the way she lived her life, and she leaned into her role as a woman who refused to follow society's rules. Much like many other actresses of her time, Gabor was labeled by the public as a nymphomaniac, a term that reflected society's discomfort with women who openly expressed their desires. But in many ways, she and others like her were challenging the strict and often unfair expectations placed on women during Hollywood's golden age. They weren't just breaking hearts, they were breaking down barriers, showing that women could have control over their love lives and reject the conventional norms that were expected of them. Robert Mitchum. If there were ever a male version of Gabor, this would be him, just like her. Robert wasn't too keen on listening to what other people thought about him, and he lived his life regardless. He was the ultimate tough guy on screen, known for his gritty roles in noir films and westerns. But off-screen, his life was just as intense. Mitchum didn't just play bad boys, he lived like one too. He had a rebellious streak that made him a bit of a Hollywood maverick, and his personal life was filled with rumors of numerous affairs. Even though Mitchum was married for decades to his wife, Dorothy, his extramarital relationships were widely talked about. His rugged charm and laid-back attitude made him irresistible, and Hollywood couldn't help but be fascinated by his romantic entanglements. Mitchum didn't care much for the spotlight, but his love life added to the mystique of his public persona, with whispers about his love affairs and escapades never far from the tabloids. In a time when many actors tried to keep their personal lives under wraps, Mitchum's rebellious nature meant he was never one to follow the rules, whether in his roles or his relationships. His ability to balance a high-profile career with a secretive love life only made him more intriguing to the public, further cementing his legacy as one of Hollywood's most complicated and charismatic stars. Marilyn Monroe. We all know Monroe, don't we? So many things have been associated with her name: beauty, style, talent. But today, we will talk about her more intimate nature. She was Hollywood's ultimate bombshell, right? But her life off-screen was far from perfect. The media loved to paint her as a nymphomaniac because of her string of high-profile relationships, like her marriages to Joe DiMaggio and Arthur Miller. And of course, there were the infamous rumors about her affairs with President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert. All of that gossip made her love life a constant headline. But what the public didn't really see was how much deeper her struggles went. Marilyn wasn't just looking for love. She was emotionally vulnerable, craving acceptance, and battling inner demons that nobody really understood. Her tragic demise at just 36 in 1962 left more questions than answers about who she truly was. Marilyn might have been this glamorous, larger-than-life figure on screen, but in real life, she was one of Hollywood's most misunderstood stars. Her story is filled with mystery, and even today she remains an iconic figure, both admired and misjudged. Angelina Jolie. With a face that can turn heads and eyes that make you freeze in your boots, Angelina Jolie certainly has earned her place on this list. Her marriage to Billy Bob Thornton was the stuff of legend. Remember when they wore vials of each other's blood around their necks? It was a relationship that constantly made headlines, especially since they were so open about their love life, often discussing it in interviews. Jolie's relationships have always sparked a lot of attention, largely because of her undeniable chemistry with her partners. Former lovers have shared stories about her adventurous side, like her love of incorporating knives into her intimate moments, which only added fuel to the media fire. While these days, Jolie focuses more on humanitarian work and raising her kids, her earlier reputation as a passionate, wild lover still follows her. That part of her story has become just as much a part of her public image as her acting career. Lana Turner. Her love life was just as dramatic as the roles she played on screen. With 7 marriages and countless affairs, she built a reputation for being unable to resist romance. She had high-profile relationships with men like Tyrone Power and Howard Hughes, but it was her scandalous affair with gangster Johnny Stompanato that really grabbed the tabloids' attention. Their relationship took a dark turn when, in 1958, Lana's teenage daughter Cheryl Crane stabbed Stompanato to death, ending a story filled with passion and violence. The media had a field day painting Lana as a woman whose love life led to tragedy. She was often labeled a nymphomaniac, a tag that stuck with her for years. But despite everything, Lana lived life on her own terms. She may have faced heartbreak and public judgment, but she never let that stop her from seeking love and living in the spotlight, even if it meant living through the consequences of her passionate choices. Tallulah Bankhead. She was loud, unapologetically bold, and never afraid to go after what she wanted. In an era when women were expected to fit into neat little boxes, Tallulah smashed every stereotype with ease. One of the things that really made her stand out was her open bisexuality. This was shocking to a lot of people at the time, especially since it wasn't something anyone openly talked about back then. But Tallulah didn't hide it. She had passionate love affairs with both men and women, with famous names like actor Gary Cooper and singer Billie Holiday being among her lovers. She didn't just have relationships, she lived them out loud, and everyone knew about it. Her love life wasn't some private affair, it was part of her public persona. She was so open about it that people couldn't help but talk about her. One of her most famous quotes was, "My father warned me about men and booze, but he never said a word about women and cocaine." It's clear she had no intention of apologizing for her wild ways, and she lived exactly how she wanted to, without a care in the world about what others thought. The press, of course, loved to make her the subject of gossip, often labeling her a nymphomaniac because of her adventurous love life. But Tallulah didn't let those labels stick. To her, she was just being herself, living free, wild, and in the moment, without caring what anyone thought. She was unapologetic, and that's part of what made her so fascinating to everyone around her. Charlie Sheen. Known for living life on the edge, his history of relationships with hundreds of women, including porn stars and escorts, Charlie became public long before the shocking revelation of his HIV diagnosis in 2015. Sheen's wild ways weren't exactly a secret. His personal life was often a topic of conversation, with stories about his outrageous parties, erratic behavior, and infamous scandals filling the tabloids for years. Even after learning of his HIV diagnosis, Sheen didn't slow down. He continued living the same hedonistic lifestyle, partying hard and engaging in reckless behavior despite the consequences. This led to massive public backlash, with many criticizing him for not taking his health and responsibilities seriously. But even with all the controversy, Sheen remained one of the most talked about figures in Hollywood. His behavior often overshadowed his acting career, but he was still able to stay relevant, proving just how much controversy seemed to follow him wherever he went. Despite all the ups and downs, Charlie Sheen's name was always in the spotlight. Whether it was for his role in 2.5 Men, his dramatic breakdowns, or his headline-grabbing personal life, Sheen was one of those celebrities who couldn't escape the constant buzz around him, good or bad. His story is a prime example of how scandal and fame often go hand in hand in the world of Hollywood. Michael Douglas. He was one of Hollywood's biggest stars and shocked fans in the 1990s when he admitted to seeking treatment for bedroom addiction. Known for his smooth charm and being a ladies' man, Douglas had always been in the public eye for his high-profile relationships and romantic escapades. His first marriage ended in part because of his infidelity, and the tabloids were filled with stories about his flings. It seemed like his personal life was just as dramatic as his Hollywood career. But over time, Douglas opened up about his struggles. In the 1990s, he revealed that his issues went beyond just the thrill of being with women. It was more complex than that. He admitted that his addiction was just a part of a bigger picture of personal challenges he was facing, and he made the brave decision to seek help. This was a side of Douglas fans had never really seen, and it showed a more vulnerable, honest side of the actor. Through all of this, Douglas found stability in his marriage to actress Catherine Zeta-Jones. She stood by him through thick and thin, including some of the toughest moments in his life. When he was diagnosed with throat cancer, it was Catherine's support that helped him fight through it. Their relationship proved to be a rock for him, and it gave him a foundation he hadn't had before. Despite the public struggles and battles, Michael Douglas didn't let those define him. His career continued to thrive, with him taking on major roles and continuing to cement his place as a Hollywood icon. It was clear that while his personal battles had been tough, they didn't overshadow his talent or his legacy in the entertainment world. He became an example of someone who could overcome their demons and still come out on top, proving that everyone has their challenges, but it doesn't have to define who you are or what you do. Is it hard to believe that beautiful and successful actors would stoop so low as to be petty thieves, right? Well, not in all cases were these actors stealing out of a disorder. Some had other reasons behind their thefts. Whether it was legitimate or not, that's a question you can answer for yourself. Dorothy Lamour. In Hollywood's golden age, Dorothy Lamour was the sarong queen. Her exotic charm and roles in tropical films earned her the title. But behind the fame and luxury, few knew a quirky side to her. She had a habit of taking things that didn't belong to her. Dorothy was famous for her roles in the Road to series with Bob Hope and Bing Crosby, but she was just as well known among studio staff for her souvenirs. After a shoot wrapped, little props and costume pieces would sometimes mysteriously go missing. Jewelry, accessories, and even small set decorations would end up in Dorothy's possession. She wasn't stealing to be sneaky, though. She just loved keeping mementos to remind her of her work. Her co-workers would later laugh about it. She had a knack for making things disappear. Some thought it was harmless, while others believed it was her way of holding on to the memories of her success. After all, Hollywood was a tough business, and stars like Dorothy constantly worried about staying relevant. Even though she had this unusual habit, Dorothy remained a beloved figure in Hollywood. Her talent and charm were undeniable, and her little collecting quirk only made her more human. It's one of those stories that adds a touch of mystery and fun to the legacy of a Golden Age star. Hedy Lamarr. She was a Hollywood icon and a brilliant inventor whose work helped pave the way for modern Wi-Fi. However, even someone as extraordinary as Hedy had her controversies. One of the most shocking was a shoplifting accusation for jewelry in the 1960s. The story made headlines everywhere. Imagine this glamorous movie star, who had once been dubbed the most beautiful woman in the world, being dragged into court over some stolen necklaces and rings. It seemed unbelievable. Hedy, of course, denied everything and claimed it was all a big misunderstanding. She said she'd simply forgotten to pay, but the media wasn't buying it. They ran with the scandal, turning what might have been an honest mistake into a full-blown character assassination. For someone who had helped invent a groundbreaking technology during World War II, this was a humiliating moment. People couldn't reconcile the genius inventor with the idea of someone sneaking jewelry out of a store. Some whispered it was kleptomania, while others thought it was a cry for attention from someone who had faded from Hollywood's spotlight. Whether it was an accident or something deeper, the incident left a dent in Hedy's reputation. Still, it's just one chapter in her fascinating life story. From inventing frequency-hopping technology to becoming a Golden Age legend, Hedy Lamarr's life proves that even the most glamorous stars can have some very human and surprising moments. Veronica Lake. With her famous blonde hair over one eye, Veronica was the 1940s Hollywood beauty. But like many stars, her life took a turn when fame began to fade. As her career declined, so did her finances. This led to a much less glamorous chapter in her life, and a surprising scandal. At one point, Veronica was accused of shoplifting from a department store. The news shocked her fans. They remembered her as the glamorous star of films like Sullivan's Travels and This Gun for Hire. What could have led a Hollywood icon to something like this? Some people said it was just a misunderstanding, that Veronica didn't mean to steal anything. Others, however, weren't so sure. By then, she was struggling to make ends meet. The pressure to maintain some normalcy might have played a role. The incident was a stark reminder of how quickly Hollywood can turn its back on its stars. Veronica, who had once been a household name, was now caught in a moment that painted her in a completely different light. Still, her story is a complex one. Whether the shoplifting accusation was true or not, it showed how even the brightest stars could struggle when the spotlight dimmed. Veronica's life may have been filled with highs and lows, but her legacy as a Golden Age icon remains unforgettable. That little scandal? Just another twist in the fascinating story of a woman who was more than her famous hair and glamorous image. Zaza Gabor. Known for her dazzling jewelry, over-the-top charm, and unapologetic love for luxury, she lived life as if it were one big, fabulous performance. But Zaza's high society antics also came with whispers of some rather cheeky behavior, like the time she was rumored to help herself to items from high-end boutiques. According to the gossip, Zaza had a habit of taking things without paying, brushing it off as if it were a perk of being Zaza Gabor. She'd reportedly quipped that the items were gifts for her beauty and charm, delivered with her signature confidence and a dazzling smile that could probably talk anyone out of filing a complaint. Whether it was true kleptomania or just Zia being Zia, the rumors added to her legend as a woman who lived by her own rules. For her, it was never about being sneaky or malicious. It was about maintaining the glamorous, larger-than-life persona she had built. In her world, it probably seemed perfectly natural to assume the world owed her a few sparkly trinkets in exchange for gracing it with her presence. Did she really swipe those items, or was it just another piece of tabloid fodder? We may never know, but one thing's for sure. Zaza Gabor knew how to keep people talking, even when she wasn't trying. It's just another colorful layer in the story of a woman who made her life her greatest performance. Tallulah Bankhead. With her raspy voice, sharp wit, and rebellious nature, she was a force to be reckoned with both on and off the screen. But Tallulah's eccentric personality also came with some peculiar habits, like her love for taking souvenirs from the parties she attended. Stories say she had a knack for pocketing little trinkets wherever she went. Whether it was a fancy lighter, a silver spoon, or a small decorative item, Tallulah didn't see it as stealing. To her, it was just a fun way to remember a good time. She'd even joke about it, saying, "Darling, I simply couldn't resist." Her charm was so disarming that most hosts didn't seem to mind, or at least they let it slide. Tallulah's unpredictable behavior was part of her allure. She lived by her own rules and never cared much for what others thought. To her, life was one big adventure, and she was going to enjoy every minute of it, trinkets and all. Whether you see it as a harmless quirk or a touch of kleptomania, this little habit of hers only adds to the legend of Tallulah Bankhead, a woman who knew how to make an impression and leave with a little keepsake to boot. Elizabeth Taylor. She was famous for her beauty, talent, and love of all things luxurious, but she was also rumored to have a habit of holding on to valuable items from her film wardrobes. Whether it was a sparkling piece of jewelry or an elegant gown, Taylor seemed to think these treasures were hers to keep. Unlike some other stars accused of kleptomania, Elizabeth's actions appeared more rooted in entitlement than compulsion. She reportedly saw the costumes and accessories as part of the rewards for being Elizabeth Taylor, a global icon and a box office queen. After all, who could blame her for wanting to keep a diamond necklace or an exquisite dress that she had brought to life on screen? While some studios grumbled about the missing items, others were too starstruck by Taylor's larger-than-life presence to make a fuss. And honestly, could you really say no to Elizabeth Taylor? Her confidence, charm, and commanding presence probably made it hard for anyone to argue with her. Whether you view this as a diva moment or just a star claiming what she felt was rightfully hers, it's undeniably part of Taylor's legendary persona. She didn't just star in movies, she lived like a queen, and queens don't return the crown jewels. It's just one more story that adds to the myth of Elizabeth Taylor, a woman who always got what she wanted, even if it wasn't officially hers. Mae West. Despite the great things you probably associate her with, Mae also had a lesser-known reputation for helping herself to little trinkets and treasures, especially when she thought no one would notice. Rumor has it that Mae had a soft spot for jewelry and other shiny objects. On more than one occasion, items from film sets or private parties mysteriously disappeared, only to later be spotted in Mae's possession. When confronted, she'd dismiss the accusations with a sly smile and a witty remark, making it nearly impossible to stay mad at her. "Darling," she might say, "I never take anything that doesn't match my style." Mae's habit wasn't exactly kleptomania. It was more like Mae being Mae. She believed she was entitled to the finer things in life and didn't see the harm in keeping a few extra souvenirs. After all, she was Mae West, the woman who could charm just about anyone with her signature sass and confidence. While her actions might have raised eyebrows, they only added to the legend of Mae West. She lived by her own rules, collected her own treasures, and left a trail of unforgettable stories in her wake. For Mae, life was a stage, and she was always the star, props and all. Joan Crawford. Everything in her life had to be just right. Her image, her performances, and even the decor in her home. But her eye for detail came with a peculiar habit. She was known to forget to return things she took a liking to, whether it was a prop, costume, or even a piece of set furniture. Studio gossip swirled for years about Joan's tendency to take items from movie sets. If a prop caught her eye or a costume perfectly suited her style, it wasn't unusual for it to mysteriously vanish. Rumor had it that she'd claim it was for research or character development, but somehow those items always seemed to end up in her home. From elegant gowns to luxurious furniture, Joan's idea of borrowing was a bit more permanent. Her perfectionism extended beyond her career. She was known to curate her home to reflect her impeccable sense of style, and she wasn't shy about bending the rules to get what she wanted. For Joan, it wasn't about kleptomania. It was about ensuring every detail of her life met her impossibly high standards. Whether it was a harmless quirk or an entitlement born from being one of Hollywood's biggest stars, Joan's habit became part of her lore. After all, when you're Joan Crawford, why settle for less than perfection, especially when it's just sitting there waiting to be borrowed? Errol Flynn. Rumor has it that Flynn had a habit of acquiring souvenirs from movie sets and fancy hotels. Whether it was a prop sword from one of his famous adventure films or a luxurious item from a lavish suite, Flynn's charm often seemed to work in his favor. Who could really say no to the roguish star of Captain Blood and the Adventures of Robin Hood? If questioned, he'd likely flash that famous grin and come up with a witty excuse that left everyone laughing instead of complaining. For Flynn, it wasn't about stealing, it was just part of his larger-than-life persona. He lived for the thrill, whether it was sailing the seas, throwing extravagant parties, or walking away with a little memento from his latest adventure. To him, the world was a playground, and he was the dashing rogue living life to the fullest. While these stories might just be part of the legend surrounding Flynn, they fit perfectly with his image as Hollywood's charming bad boy. Whether true or exaggerated, they add yet another layer to the myth of Errol Flynn, a man who made every moment and every set an adventure. Barbara Stanwyck. She built her career playing gritty, independent women, and she carried that same attitude into her personal life. This reputation for being fiercely independent extended to her behavior on set as well, where some whispers suggested she had a habit of taking home items from the productions she worked on. According to rumors, Stanwyck didn't see it as theft. She saw it as fair compensation for her hard work and dedication to her roles. Whether it was a prop or a piece of costume jewelry, if she liked something, it was said she would borrow it, sometimes without asking. After all, she was one of Hollywood's highest-paid actresses, And after giving so much of herself to her roles, what was a little keepsake here and there? These acts weren't about being sneaky, they were more about Stanwick's sense of ownership over the work she did. With the kind of roles she took on, strong, resourceful women who didn't wait around for handouts, it's easy to see how she might have felt entitled to take home a piece of the action. The on-screen tough gal seemed to be reflected in her off-screen practicality. Though not widely reported or as infamous as other stars' kleptomania rumors, Stanwick's supposed habit adds another layer to the image of a woman who worked hard, played hard, and wasn't about to ask permission for what she believed was rightfully hers. Lana Turner. As the ultimate blonde bombshell of Hollywood's golden age, Lana was always at the center of attention, known for her stunning beauty, glamorous image, and tumultuous love life. She was one of the most talked-about stars of her time. But while her movie career and personal drama often made headlines, there were also whispers about some of her more questionable behaviors. Among the gossip was the suggestion that Lana had a habit of walking off with items from movie sets or high-end boutiques. Whether it was a piece of jewelry, a prop from one of her films, or an expensive accessory, rumors circulated that Lana didn't always bother to return the things she borrowed, or sometimes even those she didn't. The media and the public were so enchanted by her charm and beauty that any accusations of theft tended to get lost in the noise of her fame. In a way, Lana Turner's allure was so powerful that people were more likely to overlook or downplay these allegations. She was the picture of elegance and perfection, and who could resist her captivating presence? If she forgot to return something, it was often dismissed as just another quirk of her star status rather than a serious accusation. Though the stories about her kleptomaniac tendencies never became widely known or confirmed, they added another layer to her mystique, just another piece of gossip to fuel the legend of Lana Turner, the woman who seemed to have it all, and maybe a little extra too. Clara Bow. They called her the dazzling it girl of the 1920s. She was the embodiment of Hollywood glamour during the silent film era. With her captivating smile, fiery red hair, and magnetic screen presence, she captured the hearts of audiences and critics alike, becoming the first true superstar of Hollywood. But behind the glitz and glam of her fame, Clara Bow's life was filled with more complexity than the average fan could imagine, including rumors of her helping herself to a few items that didn't quite belong to her. Bow came from humble beginnings, growing up in poverty in Brooklyn, New York. She wasn't born into the luxury and fame that would later define her career, so when she hit it big in Hollywood, it's believed that she was eager to hold on to the opulence she'd finally achieved. In an industry known for its wealth and extravagance, Bow might have felt a need to secure a little piece of the lifestyle she had only dreamed of as a child. And that, according to some stories, may have led her to pocket a few items here and there, whether they were jewelry, costumes, or even small props from the sets she worked on. Rumors swirled about Bow's penchant for taking things that caught her eye. Whether it was a dazzling necklace from a film wardrobe or a beautiful piece of furniture from a movie set, there were whispers that Clara Bow didn't always ask before she took something that she thought was just too beautiful or too valuable to leave behind. For someone who had spent her early years struggling and scraping by, the notion of acquiring these treasures likely felt like a reward for everything she had fought for. Some of the stories suggested it wasn't a malicious habit, but more of a coping mechanism for Bow, a way to hold on to a piece of the dream that had finally come true. She had gone from being a poor girl in Brooklyn to one of the most sought-after stars in Hollywood, so perhaps taking a little something here and there was her way of holding on to that dream, of making sure she never went back to the life she had before. Her reputation as Hollywood's it girl only made matters more complicated. She was adored by fans, but often criticized by Hollywood insiders for being a bit too wild and impulsive. Her actions, if they were ever noticed, were often dismissed as the behaviors of a star who had grown accustomed to getting what she wanted. Bow's larger-than-life persona, filled with both charm and scandal, made it easy for the public to forgive, or at least ignore, her alleged kleptomania. Despite the whispers about her behavior, Clara Bow's career didn't suffer much from these rumors. Marlene Dietrich. The German-born actress and singer was one of the most glamorous and enigmatic stars of Hollywood's golden age. Known for her striking beauty, sultry voice, and commanding presence, Dietrich captivated audiences around the world with her portrayals of strong, sophisticated women. But behind the allure and elegance, there were rumors that Dietrich had a bit of a penchant for collecting luxury items, sometimes without permission. Dietrich's love for luxury was well known. She was known to wear designer gowns, flaunt stunning jewels, and attend extravagant parties, living a lifestyle that perfectly matched her on-screen persona. She wasn't just a star, she was an icon of sophistication and refinement, someone who seemed to have the world at her feet. But with such a high-profile life came whispers about her behavior off-camera, particularly in relation to her occasional habit of collecting things that caught her eye. Rumors suggest that Dietrich often took small but expensive items, jewelry, trinkets, or even fashionable accessories, from private parties, movie sets, or even luxury boutiques. It wasn't so much about stealing as it was about her discerning eye and an apparent sense of entitlement to the finest things life had to offer. In a world where she was surrounded by opulence, it might have seemed perfectly natural to her to take home a piece of the luxury she admired. One of the reasons this behavior might have flown under the radar was Dietrich's undeniable charm and elegance. Her impeccable poise and unearthly beauty made it easy for people to overlook or forgive any minor infractions, especially when they came from someone as mesmerizing as Dietrich. If she happened to forget to return an item, no one was likely to challenge her. After all, she had a magnetic presence that made her irresistible, and her fame provided her with a sort of shield from any real scrutiny. Dietrich's reputation as a glamorous diva also added a layer of mystique to her rumored kleptomania. In a way, it was almost fitting. She was the embodiment of the Hollywood starlet who could do no wrong. If she took a piece of jewelry or a piece of decor from a set, it was almost as if she deserved it. After all, she was Marlene Dietrich. This attitude may have been compounded by her early experiences in Europe, where she struggled to make ends meet before her rise to fame. Coming from a modest background, she was known to have a complex relationship with wealth and luxury, appreciating it perhaps more than those born into privilege. Her penchant for collecting items also became part of her larger-than-life persona. Dietrich's life was filled with intrigue, from her love affairs to her fierce independence. Taking things, whether consciously or subconsciously, seemed like just another part of the bold character she had cultivated. A woman who could make headlines for being a star on screen could just as easily make them for her less-than-glamorous tendencies off-screen. While these stories were never fully substantiated, they contribute to the myth and allure of Dietrich's legacy. She was the kind of star who defied convention, and her rumored kleptomania only added to the mystique that surrounded her. Whether or not she truly helped herself to a few luxury items during her rise to fame, the rumors fit perfectly with the persona of a woman who was unapologetically herself and who lived life on her own terms. On the 30th of March 1939, at the bustling premiere of Maisie in Los Angeles, a star named Ann Sothern captivated the silver screen, embodying the vivacious and witty character that would define her legacy. Unknown to the glittering crowds and even to Sothern herself, this role would etch her name into the annals of Hollywood's golden age, yet also cast a shadow over her diverse talents and contributions. As Sothern's Maisie charmed audiences nationwide, a complex narrative unfolded off-screen, one of ambition, resilience, and the untold struggles within the gilded cages of Hollywood. This story, much like a cipher hidden in plain sight, reveals the intricate layers of an actress navigating the highs and lows of fame, battling the industry's typecasting and gender biases, all while leaving a mark subtly obscured by time. Through the lens of her career, we delve into a journey not just of a forgotten luminary, but of Hollywood itself, exploring the enigmatic legacy of Ann Sothern, whose brilliance on and off the camera remains a testament to her undervalued impact on the cinematic world. The Untold Beginning. In the brisk winter of 1909, the small town of Valley City, North Dakota, became the birthplace of a future star, Harriet Arlene Lake, known to the world as Ann Sothern. Born into a family where music and the arts were the lifeblood, her mother, Annette Wide Lake, a concert singer, and her father, Walter J. Lake, a pianist, the stage was set for Anne's entrance into the world of entertainment from her earliest days. The journey from Valley City to the glowing marquees of Hollywood was marked by a series of pivotal moments and encounters that shaped Southern's early career. In the mid-1920s, the Lake family relocated to Minneapolis, where Anne's passion for acting took root. By the tender age of 16, Anne was already performing in local theater productions, demonstrating a natural talent that could not be ignored. The year 1927 marked a significant turning point when Anne and her mother made the bold decision to move to California. The allure of Hollywood's burgeoning film industry was irresistible, and for a young actress like Anne, it promised the fulfillment of her dreams. Yet the reality of Hollywood in the late 1920s was far from the glamorous ideal portrayed in fan magazines and on the silver screen. It was a place of fierce competition, where countless hopefuls vied for a chance to shine. Anne's early years in Hollywood were fraught with challenges. She found work where she could, taking on bit parts in films like Broadway Nights, 1927, and enduring the hardships of the Great Depression. The industry was in flux, transitioning from silent films to talkies, a shift that spelled the end of many careers. Undeterred, Anne honed her craft, studying at the Pasadena Playhouse and taking on various stage roles, all the while waiting for her breakthrough moment. That moment came in the early 1930s, though not without its trials. Anne's initial contract with Columbia Pictures ended after a year with little to show for it. However, her persistence paid off when she caught the eye of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer MGM scouts, leading to a contract with one of Hollywood's most prestigious studios. It was under MGM's banner that Anne Southern would find her niche, not as a glamorous leading lady, but as the vivacious, quick-witted Maisie Ravier, a role that would define her career. The Maisie series, which began with Maisie, 1939, catapulted Anne to fame. Her portrayal of the smart, independent, and resourceful title character resonated with audiences, offering a blend of humor and heart that was both refreshing and relatable. The success of Maisie led to 9 sequels, securing Anne Southern's place in Hollywood's pantheon of stars. Yet the path to stardom was not solely defined by her on-screen achievements. Behind the scenes, Anne navigated the complexities of studio politics, the fickleness of public adoration, and the personal sacrifices required by her profession. Her journey from the stages of Minneapolis to the silver screen of Hollywood is a testament to her resilience, talent, and unwavering determination to succeed against the odds. Anne Southern's early years, marked by both struggle and triumph, laid the foundation for a career that would span over 6 decades. In those formative moments, a star was born, one whose legacy would endure long beyond her final curtain call. The Maisie controversy. In 1939, MGM introduced audiences to Maisie Ravier, a savvy and spirited showgirl with a heart of gold, portrayed with charismatic aplomb by Anne Southern. The film Maisie was not just a hit. It spawned a series of 10 movies produced until 1947, transforming Southern from a talented actress into a household name. Yet, as the series progressed, it became a double-edged sword, both elevating and entrapping Southern within a specific persona. The character of Maisie, while beloved for her wit and resilience, became a gilded cage for Southern. The actress, whose range extended far beyond the light-hearted comedy of the Maisie series, found herself battling against the typecasting that often accompanies a recurring role. Despite her success, Southern's artistic ambitions chafed under the constraints of repeating the same character, yearning for roles that could showcase the breadth of her talent. The internal conflicts at MGM regarding the direction of the Maisie series further complicated matters. Southern frequently found herself at odds with studio executives and writers over the development of her character. She pushed for storylines that would allow Maisie to evolve, seeking depth and variety in her roles that the formulaic approach of the series seldom offered. These creative disputes highlighted the tension between the studio's commercial interests and the artistic aspirations of its contracted talent. Notable figures within MGM, including producer J. Walter Rubin, who directed the first Maisie film, initially supported Southern's vision for the character. However, Rubin's untimely death in 1942 and the studio's prioritization of consistency over creativity left Southern navigating the series' future with less support. The struggle for creative control was emblematic of a broader issue within the studio system, where actors, despite their contributions to a film's success, had limited influence over their career's trajectory. As World War II raged and the American public sought escapism in cinema, the Maisie series continued to be a profitable venture for MGM, reinforcing the studio's reluctance to alter a successful formula. Despite this, Southern's performances never waned in quality. She infused each portrayal of Maisie with freshness and vitality, a testament to her professionalism and commitment to her craft. The end of the Maisie series in 1947 did not mark the end of Southern's struggle with typecasting, but it did close a chapter on a part of her career that was both defining and restrictive. In the years that followed, Southern sought out diverse roles in film and television, demonstrating her versatility as an actress. Yet, the shadow of Maisie Ravier lingered, a reminder of the complexities of Hollywood stardom and the personal costs of professional success. Hollywood's double standards? The glimmering facade of Hollywood's golden age often masked the stark realities of its double standards, particularly when it came to gender. For actresses like Ann Sothern, navigating this landscape meant contending with an industry that celebrated femininity on screen while simultaneously constraining the roles women could play, both on and off the set. As Southern's career progressed through the 1930s and 1940s, she, like many of her contemporaries, found herself caught in a paradox. On one hand, her roles in films and the Maisie series showcased strong, independent women who could hold their own against any adversity. On the other, the very industry that provided these roles imposed rigid expectations on actresses, dictating not just the characters they played but also their public and private lives. The era was marked by the enforcement of the Motion Picture Production Code, colloquially known as the Hays Code, which sought to regulate content deemed morally questionable. While it impacted all aspects of film production, the code also reinforced traditional gender roles and limited the depiction of women's independence and sexuality, affecting the types of roles available to actresses. Beyond the screen, the studio system exerted control over actresses' images, often requiring them to conform to idealized standards of beauty and comportment. Contracts could include clauses that dictated personal choices, from dating to weight management, reflecting broader societal expectations of women. These constraints were emblematic of the double standards that permeated the industry, celebrating the allure of Hollywood's leading ladies while tightly controlling their autonomy. Ann Sothern's experiences reflect these contradictions. Despite her success and popularity, she too was subject to the whims of studio executives and the limitations imposed by the era's gender norms. Yet through her performances, Sothern subtly challenged these conventions, bringing complexity and strength to her roles that resonated with audiences and hinted at a broader spectrum of female experience than Hollywood was often willing to acknowledge. The double standards of Hollywood's golden age offer a window into the complexities of gender, power, and representation in an era that shaped modern cinema. As we look back on this period through the lens of contemporary understanding, the stories of actresses like Ann Sothern gain new dimensions, highlighting not just the challenges they faced, but also their contributions to the evolving landscape of film and culture. The Secret Loves. In the whirlwind of Hollywood's golden age, where the personal often intertwined with the public, Ann Sothern's romantic life unfolded beneath the studio's watchful eye. Her marriages, notably to Roger Pryor in 1936 and Robert Sterling in 1943, were not just personal milestones, but events that mirrored the complexities and expectations of a star under the studio system's glare. Ann's first marriage to Roger Pryor, a fellow actor, became a subject of public fascination. The couple married on September 18, 1936, in a ceremony that, while glamorous, hinted at the pressures they faced under the Hollywood spotlight. Their union, celebrated in the press, also underscored the challenges of maintaining a relationship when both partners were in the demanding world of show business. Despite their efforts, the marriage succumbed to these pressures, ending in divorce in 1943. Almost immediately following her divorce from Pryor, Sothern married Robert Sterling, another actor whose career was on the rise. Their marriage on May 23, 1943, was seen as a fresh start for Sothern, who sought stability and happiness away from the film set's demands. Yet this relationship, too, was subject to the strains inherent in Hollywood marriages. The couple welcomed a daughter, Tisha Sterling, in 1944, which brought joy to their lives but also new challenges. The marriage ultimately ended in divorce in 1949, leaving Southern to navigate the complexities of life as a single mother and leading lady. Beyond her marriages, rumors of Southern's relationships and associations filled the gossip columns. Her close friendships within the industry with figures such as Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz provided fodder for the press, highlighting the blurred lines between personal affiliations and public perceptions in Hollywood's tightly knit community. Southern's romantic life, though marked by its highs and lows, was characterized by a resilience and independence that mirrored her on-screen personas. Despite the studio system's attempts to manage its stars' images, Southern navigated her personal life with a level of discretion that allowed her to maintain a degree of privacy, a rare feat in an era where stars' lives were open books. Her experiences reflect the broader narrative of women in Hollywood during the mid-20th century who balanced their careers, personal desires, and the industry's expectations. Southern's journey through love, heartbreak, and motherhood offers a window into the realities behind the glamour, revealing a woman who, despite the public's gaze, sought to carve out her own path in love and in life. Blacklisting fears. The late 1940s and 1950s were tumultuous times for Hollywood. The HUAC, established to investigate alleged disloyalty and subversive activities on the part of private citizens, public employees, and those organizations suspected of having communist ties, turned its eye toward Hollywood in 1947. The entertainment industry, known for its liberal leanings and high-profile personalities, became a focal point for accusations of communist infiltration. Ann Southern, whose career was at its peak during this period, found herself in an industry rife with fear and suspicion. While Southern herself was not called before the HUAC, nor was she blacklisted, the atmosphere of the era inevitably affected all who worked in Hollywood. The blacklist, a result of the hearings, led to the shunning of actors, writers, directors, and others accused of communist affiliations, many of whom were blacklisted based on rumors or associations rather than concrete evidence. During this time, Southern continued her work in both film and television, including starring in The Ann Southern Show, which ran from 1958 to 1961. However, the climate of fear and the industry's self-censorship meant that topics that were deemed controversial or too politically charged were avoided. This environment limited the scope of creative expression and the types of roles available, even for those not directly implicated by the HUAC hearings. Notable figures during this era, such as screenwriter Dalton Trumbo and actor Charlie Chaplin, faced significant professional and personal repercussions due to their alleged communist ties or leftist sympathies. Trumbo was one of the Hollywood 10, a group of writers and directors who were jailed and blacklisted for their refusal to answer the HUAC's inquiries regarding their political affiliations. The impact of the Red Scare on Hollywood was profound, creating an environment where suspicion prevailed over creativity, and careers were often collateral damage in the fight against perceived communist influence. For actors like Ann Southern, navigating this landscape required caution and resilience, as the implications of being associated with blacklisted individuals or ideologies could be career-ending. The Forgotten Pioneer. Ann Southern's career trajectory took a pioneering turn when she transitioned from film to television, a move that was both innovative and risky at the time. In the early 1950s, television was still an emerging medium, often looked down upon by Hollywood's film elite. Southern, however, saw an opportunity. In 1953, she starred in Private Secretary, a television series that ran until 1957. The show was a success, showcasing Southern's comedic timing and charm to a new audience and proving that television could offer substantial roles for film actors. What is less known about Ann Southern's venture into television is her role as a producer. The Ann Southern Show, which aired from 1958 to 1961, was not just a vehicle for her acting talents. Southern also took on an active role in its production. This was at a time when female producers were a rarity in Hollywood. Her involvement in the production aspects of the show marked her as one of the first women in television to take on such a role, paving the way for future generations of female producers and directors in the industry. Southern's pioneering work extended beyond her on-screen roles and production work. She was also instrumental in negotiating the rights and syndication deals for her television shows, demonstrating an understanding of the business side of entertainment that was ahead of her time. Her foresight and negotiations ensured that The Ann Sothern Show and Private Secretary would be enjoyed by audiences for years to come through reruns and syndication, a concept that was still in its infancy in the 1950s. Despite these significant contributions, Ann Sothern's role as a pioneer in the television industry is often overshadowed by her film career and her portrayal of Maisie. Yet, her work in television, both in front of and behind the camera, highlights her versatility, foresight, and willingness to embrace new challenges. Ann Sothern's pioneering efforts in the television industry are a testament to her innovative spirit and her significant yet often overlooked contributions to the medium's development. Her work laid the groundwork for future actors and producers, demonstrating the potential of television as a platform for creative expression and business acumen. The final act, A Legacy in Shadows. As the golden era of Hollywood cinema began to wane, Ann Sothern's career entered what could be considered its final act. By the 1960s, the landscape of the entertainment industry had shifted dramatically, with television becoming a dominant force and the studio system that had once ruled supreme undergoing significant changes. During this period, Sothern's work transitioned more towards television, including a notable role in The Ann Sothern Show, 1958-1961, which solidified her place in the pantheon of television stars. However, it was her return to film in the 1980s that marked a poignant moment in Sothern's career. In 1987, she received critical acclaim for her role in The Whales of August, a film that featured screen legends Bette Davis and Lillian Gish. Sothern's performance in this film at the age of 78 showcased her enduring talent and versatility as an actress. Despite the accolades, including an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress, this late-career resurgence did not fully rekindle the widespread recognition one might have expected for such a storied career. Sothern's legacy, particularly in the later years of her life, is reflective of the broader narrative of many Golden Age Hollywood actors whose contributions have faded into the background of popular cultural memory. Her work, spanning over 5 decades, contributed significantly to both film and television, yet the full extent of her impact is often overlooked in retrospectives of the era. Ann Sothern passed away on March 15, 2001, in Ketchum, Idaho, leaving behind a body of work that spans a critical period in American entertainment history. Her journey from the stages of North Dakota to the silver screen of Hollywood and onto the television sets of America's living rooms is a testament to her adaptability, talent, and perseverance. While Sothern's name may not be as readily recognized today as some of her contemporaries, her legacy endures through her contributions to the evolution of acting in film and television. Her pioneering work in television production, her memorable performances across multiple decades, and her ability to navigate the changing tides of the entertainment industry mark her as a significant figure in Hollywood history. The fans may have loved them at first, because after all, they've built a career by acting well. But through the corridors of Hollywood, others saw them for what they truly were. Whether misunderstood or just plain obnoxious, these actors were some of the most hated celebrities of their time. Louis B. Mayer. He was the big boss of MGM Studios back in Hollywood's golden era. Now you'd think being the head of one of the most powerful studios would make him a beloved figure, right? Not even close. Mayer wasn't just disliked, he was outright feared by almost everyone who worked under him. This guy ruled Hollywood with an iron fist and ensured you knew it. First off, Mayer had this obsession with control. To him, his stars weren't just actors, they were investments, commodities he could shape and manipulate however he saw fit. He didn't care about their personal feelings or freedom. What mattered was how they contributed to MGM's image and bottom line. For example, he had strict control over his stars' personal lives. If you were under contract with MGM, you didn't just work for Mayer, you belonged to him. Got caught in a scandal? Don't worry, Mayer's team of fixers would swoop in, but not because he cared about you. It was all about protecting MGM's squeaky clean image. He'd cover up affairs, hush up DUIs, and even arrange marriages just to avoid bad press. Oh, and if you dared to step out of line or refused his orders, he'd destroy your career faster than you could say, talkies. Take Judy Garland, for example. Mayer is infamous for how he treated her. He turned her into a star, sure, but at a massive cost. She was barely a teenager when MGM signed her, and Mayer immediately started tearing her down. He told her she was too fat to be a leading lady and put her on a strict diet of black coffee, cigarettes, and diet pills. Can you imagine doing that to a kid? Mayer saw her as a product, not a person, and she paid the price for it with years of addiction and insecurity. Then there's the whole crying routine he was famous for. Mayer had this bizarre tactic where he'd pretend to cry during negotiations, hoping to guilt people into signing terrible deals. But the worst part, he could be ruthless when it came to punishing disobedience. Stars who dared to challenge him often found themselves blacklisted or trapped in their contracts, unable to work for anyone else. He'd use smear campaigns, legal threats, and anything else in his arsenal to keep his empire intact. It was like living under a dictatorship, but with better costumes. Now, don't get me wrong, Mayer was a genius in many ways. He built MGM into a powerhouse and created some of the most iconic films of all time. But behind all of that, there was a man who thrived on control, manipulation, and fear. That's why, even though he was respected for his power, Louis B. Mayer was one of the most hated figures in Hollywood's golden age. Mae West. One of the most controversial and misunderstood figures of Hollywood's golden age is definitely Mae West. She wasn't just ahead of her time, she was light years ahead, which made her a huge target. She had a sharp wit, undeniable charisma, and a no-holds-barred approach to talking about intimacy. But on the other hand, she ruffled all kinds of feathers back in the ultra-conservative 1930s. Here's the thing about Mae. She owned her sexuality, and she made no apologies for it. At a time when women were expected to be demure and ladylike, Mae came out with her double entendres, curve-hugging gowns, and a swagger that screamed confidence. Too much confidence. And for audiences? That was electrifying. People loved her. She could walk into a room and deliver a one-liner that would leave everyone in stitches or blushing. But Hollywood censors? Oh, they hated her. Mae wasn't just pushing boundaries, she was bulldozing through them. Her 1933 film, She Done Him Wrong, yes, the one that gave us the line, "Why don't you come up sometime and see me?"
Why don't you come up sometime, see me?
Was dripping with innuendo. Conservative groups were horrified, calling her films immoral and dangerous. Religious leaders preached against her, calling her the downfall of American values. She became public enemy number one for the censors, who were scrambling to keep Hollywood clean. Then came the infamous Hays Code, a strict set of rules meant to keep movies decent. Mae's work was a big reason the code was enforced so harshly. They wanted to shut her down, and they did everything they could to make her disappear. She was blacklisted by the industry, her scripts were gutted, and her career in film was essentially derailed. But did Mae go quietly? Of course not. Mae shifted gears and took her act to Las Vegas, Broadway, and even radio, where she caused more controversy. In 1937, she appeared on a live broadcast with ventriloquist Edgar Bergen and his dummy Charlie McCarthy. Mae, being Mae, turned the innocent puppet routine into a flirtatious back and forth. It was hilarious, but it sent the prudish crowd into a frenzy. NBC received so many complaints that Mae was banned from their airwaves. Yup, banned for talking to a puppet. Here's the interesting part. While the Hollywood elite and the moral crusaders despised her, Mae knew she was making waves. She once said, "I believe in censorship. I made a fortune out of it." That's Mae West in a nutshell, turning society's outrage into a career. She wasn't just a provocateur, she was a trailblazer, proving that women could own their sexuality and still be powerful. So, yeah, Mae West was hated by censors, moralists, and the Hollywood establishment, but she didn't care. She walked away with her head held high, and a legacy that still makes people blush and laugh at the same time. Bette Davis. There's no denying her talent. She was a powerhouse actress who could light up a scene like nobody else. But if you worked with her, chances are you'd walk away either awestruck or swearing never to do it again. Bette was as famous for her feisty personality as she was for her iconic roles, and that made her a lot of enemies in Hollywood. First of all, Bette didn't take crap from anyone. Directors, studio heads, co-stars, it didn't matter who you were. If you crossed her or didn't meet her standards, she'd let you know. And not in a polite, behind-closed-doors kind of way. She'd call you out right then and there, sometimes with a sharp comment or an icy glare that could freeze you in your tracks. To some, this was refreshing. She wasn't afraid to fight for what she wanted. But for many, it was just plain intimidating. Take her feud with Jack Warner, the head of Warner Brothers Studios. Bet wanted better scripts and better pay, but Warner saw her as just another actress under contract. When she tried to leave the studio for better opportunities, Warner blocked her at every turn, leading to a very public legal battle. Bet lost the case, but she won something more important: respect. She was one of the first stars to challenge the studio system, and while it made her a pioneer, it also made her a target for resentment. And then there was her legendary rivalry with Joan Crawford. These two couldn't stand each other, and their feud became Hollywood legend. On the set of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, they took every chance to one-up and undermine each other. Bet reportedly kicked Joan hard enough during one scene to require stitches, and Joan retaliated by wearing lead weights under her costume, making it nearly impossible for Bet to lift her in another scene. It was petty, it was dramatic, and it was everything you'd expect from two divas at the top of their game. Even her co-stars weren't spared. Actor George Brent, who worked with her on multiple films, once called her the most difficult woman in Hollywood. And Miriam Hopkins, her frequent co-star, described working with Bet as a battlefield experience. Hopkins hated her so much that she spread rumors about Bet, saying she had slept her way to the top. Bet, of course, fired back, saying Miriam was just jealous. But here's the thing, Bet wasn't difficult for the sake of being difficult. She cared deeply about her work and had a perfectionist streak a mile wide. She once said, "I will never be below the title," meaning she wouldn't settle for anything less than excellence, whether it was from herself or those around her. That kind of attitude earned her 2 Oscars and countless iconic roles, but it also made her a magnet for conflict. At the end of the day, Bette Davis didn't play by the rules, and that made her both hated and admired in equal measure. She fought tooth and nail for her career, and while she ruffled plenty of feathers along the way, she never apologized for it. Love her or hate her, you couldn't ignore her. And that's exactly how she wanted it. Bing Crosby. To fans, he was the ultimate symbol of smooth, effortless charm. His velvety voice made him a legend with songs like White Christmas, and he seemed like the epitome of the all-American family man in movies like Going My Way. But behind that squeaky clean image, there was a much darker, more complicated reality, and it was his own family who blew the whistle. For years, Bing's public persona was untouchable. He was the guy everyone wanted to invite to Christmas dinner, warm, genial, and endlessly talented. But in 1983, after his death, his eldest son, Gary Crosby, published a tell-all memoir titled Going My Own Way, and let me tell you, it shattered the illusion. According to Gary, Bing wasn't the easygoing dad America thought he was. Instead, Gary described him as a cold, authoritarian figure who ruled the household with an iron fist. One of the most shocking claims was how Bing disciplined his kids. Gary wrote that his father used a thick belt to punish them, often for minor infractions like not finishing dinner or talking back. And this wasn't just your standard strict parenting of the time, it was reportedly brutal both physically and emotionally. Gary said his dad would mock their weight, calling them fatso or bucket butt if they gained a few pounds. Imagine having Bing Crosby, of all people, the voice of calm and Christmas cheer, tearing you down like that. But Gary wasn't the only one with grievances. His brothers also backed up the claims, painting a picture of a man who was distant, demanding, and deeply flawed. 2 of Bing's sons, Lindsay and Dennis, struggled with depression and substance abuse for years, and both tragically died by suicide in the late 1980s. Their deaths further fueled speculation about how much their troubled relationship with their father contributed to their struggles. Now, Bing's defenders argue that he came from a different time. He grew up in a strict Irish Catholic household himself, so some say he was just passing down what he'd learned. But let's be real. Being a product of your time doesn't excuse being cruel. Even some of Bing's closest friends admitted he had a temper and could be controlling, especially when it came to his family. The revelations were a huge blow to Bing's reputation. Fans who had adored him for decades suddenly saw him in a completely different light. It was like finding out Santa Claus had a dark side, and while some still choose to focus on his contributions to music and film, others can't overlook the pain he caused behind closed doors. So, Bing Crosby? A beloved icon on the surface, but his memory is forever complicated by the shadows his family exposed. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's a reminder that even the brightest stars can have a darker side. Erich von Stroheim. This guy was so divisive that he literally earned the nickname "the man you love to hate," and honestly, it fit him perfectly. Stroheim was a visionary filmmaker and actor, but his colossal ego, perfectionism, and flair for the dramatic made him a nightmare for everyone who had to work with him. First, let's set the stage. Stroheim was born in Austria, and when he arrived in Hollywood, he leaned hard into this European aristocrat persona. He dressed like a nobleman, spoke with a thick accent, and even claimed to be a count. Spoiler alert, none of that was true. He was just a guy from a middle-class background who knew how to sell himself. But hey, it worked. He became famous for playing villains, the sadistic, monocle-wearing type, and he carried that larger-than-life energy into his career as a director. Now, here's the thing about Stroheim. He was brilliant. Films like Greed and Foolish Wives are considered masterpieces today, but at the time, they were infamous for their chaos behind the scenes. Stroheim demanded absolute control over every aspect of his productions. He wasn't just a perfectionist, he was obsessed. For Greed, he shot over 85 hours of footage, including an insane amount of detail no one would ever see, like gold teeth for extras who barely appeared on screen. Studio executives were tearing their hair out trying to rein him in. And then there was the money. Stroheim was notorious for blowing through budgets like they were monopoly money. Take Foolish Wives, for example. It was billed as the first million-dollar movie, but Stroheim just kept spending, adding ridiculous flourishes like recreating entire European streets for authenticity. Studio heads begged him to scale back, but he refused. For Stroheim, compromise wasn't an option. His behavior on set didn't help either. Stroheim was notoriously demanding and abrasive, treating actors and crew members like chess pieces in his grand vision. Actress Zazu Pitts, one of his regular collaborators, once described working with him as exhausting but brilliant. Others weren't so kind. If you didn't meet his expectations, he'd berate you until you did, or until you quit. Unsurprisingly, studio executives hated him. They saw Stroheim as a liability, a director who couldn't stick to a schedule or a budget. Eventually, they started editing his films without his input, cutting down his epic works into shorter, more marketable versions. This drove Stroheim insane. He considered it a betrayal of his art, and honestly, he never fully recovered from it. By the mid-1920s, his career as a director was basically over. But here's the kicker. Despite all the drama, Stroheim's films are now hailed as some of the greatest of their time. His meticulous attention to detail and his refusal to compromise are the things that made his work stand out, even if they made him impossible to work with. He may have alienated just about everyone in Hollywood, but Stroheim stayed true to his vision, for better or worse. So why was he hated? Because he was brilliant, stubborn, and unapologetically himself, even when it cost him everything. Love him or hate him, Stroheim's work as a Hollywood rebel is undeniable. Norma Shearer. While she was undeniably talented, there were rumors in Hollywood that her career success wasn't solely the result of her acting abilities, but because of her marriage to Irving Thalberg, the head of MGM Studios. Norma was often seen as the beneficiary of unfair advantages. Thalberg, known as the boy wonder of Hollywood, was one of the most powerful men in the business, and his influence helped her rise to the top, Critics and rivals claimed that Norma was handed plum roles that other actresses who were considered more talented or better suited for certain roles didn't get. The idea was that she was being favored, not because of her acting chops, but because she was Thalberg's wife. Her marriage to Thalberg certainly helped open doors, but it also fueled jealousy and resentment from other actresses who felt she didn't have to work as hard for her success. On top of that, she was often typecast as the good girl in MGM's opulent, glamorous productions, roles that critics felt were too easy and not as challenging as those given to other actresses who had to fight for their spots. The real animosity, however, came from her personal life and the perceived privilege she held within the studio. For one thing, Norma was not exactly the best at playing the parts that made her a star, like the virtuous wife or the pure-hearted love interest. Some felt she was much more suited to complex, more rebellious roles, but the studio kept her locked into these lighter, more sanitized characters. Her critics argued that she wasn't just playing it safe with her roles, but that she was being forced into them because of her connection to Thalberg. This perception of preferential treatment followed her through her career, with some claiming that she was given too much creative freedom, like the fact that she was allowed to collaborate on scripts or have a say in casting decisions, while other actresses were fighting tooth and nail to get any creative input at all. As much as Norma was beloved by her fans, the truth was that within Hollywood she often found herself at odds with many of her peers. They accused her of having it easy because of who she was married to. It's like she had this giant target on her back because she was married to one of the most powerful men in the industry, and no matter how hard she worked, some people could never let go of the idea that she had an unfair advantage. The reality might be somewhere in between. She was certainly talented, but her marriage to Thalberg certainly opened doors that others had to fight their way through. Jean Harlow. Her persona on screen was often seen as vulgar and cheap by many in the industry. Her roles frequently played on her sexuality, casting her as the dumb blonde or the seductress, which fueled the stereotype of her as nothing more than a pretty face. Critics didn't just see her as an object of desire, they saw her as a symbol of moral decline. To a conservative Hollywood elite, her overtly sexualized image and the way she embraced her sexuality were dangerous. But the harshest judgment came from her tumultuous personal life. Harlow's relationships, especially her brief, troubled marriage to MGM executive Paul Byrne, were the subject of intense public scrutiny. When Byrne died under mysterious circumstances, rumors swirled that Harlow was involved, further tarnishing her reputation. The media had a field day with her personal life, and Hollywood insiders saw her as someone who couldn't separate her public persona from her private one. The more Hollywood tried to control her image, the more it seemed to alienate her. Her critics painted her as a symbol of Hollywood's tawdry side, someone who existed only to be ogled and whose life was filled with scandal. This portrayal overshadowed the more complex woman behind the scenes. Jean Harlow was, in fact, a highly intelligent, ambitious woman who had a sharp business sense and was actively involved in her career. She was also known for being kind-hearted and generous with those around her. But none of that mattered in the public eye. The more the press sensationalized her image, the more they reduced her to the blonde bombshell trope. On top of this, Jean's fierce determination to succeed in an industry that was dominated by powerful men didn't always sit well with her male counterparts. While she was known to stand her ground and fight for her roles, many saw her as ungrateful or difficult to work with, which only added fuel to the fire. The tragic part? By the time Jean's career was peaking, she was already suffering from health problems, including kidney failure, which would eventually take her life at just 26. Her untimely death only added to her legend, but it also meant she didn't live long enough to truly redefine her image. So, while Jean Harlow was viewed by many as a symbol of Hollywood's excess and scandal, the truth is, her story was much more complicated than the image people had of her. She may have been called vulgar by critics, but in reality she was a pioneering figure in Hollywood, a woman who broke the mold in an industry that demanded conformity. Gloria Swanson. Her feud with director Cecil B. DeMille, in particular, became a point of tension. Swanson's work with DeMille, especially in the early days of her career, was highly successful. But she wasn't one to bow down to anyone, and as her fame grew, she became more unwilling to take orders. Her departure from DeMille's productions signified a major break, with some saying it was due to her refusal to adhere to the director's traditional ways of working. But it wasn't just her behavior on set that turned people off, it was also her sense of entitlement. Gloria was often accused of trying to control her career and public image in a way that could be seen as manipulative. As one of the biggest stars of the silent film era, she became accustomed to being treated like royalty, and she expected that same level of adoration from everyone around her, even when her star power began to wane. Hollywood always had shining stars, but beneath the surface lies a darker side, a history marked by manipulation, betrayal, and cruelty. Some actresses didn't just play villains on screen, they brought their ruthlessness into real life. From feuds that destroyed careers to schemes that went far beyond the cameras, their actions weren't just scandalous, they were downright chilling. But who were these women, and what made them cross the line? Norma Shearer. She was a stunning, poised actress at the top of her game in the 1930s, but with a little secret weapon up her sleeve: her husband, Irving Thalberg, the head honcho of MGM, the most powerful studio at the time. Being married to the boy wonder of Hollywood meant Norma wasn't just any actress. She practically had a direct line to the casting couch, and not in the way you'd think. Here's where it gets juicy. Norma was accused of using her marital connection to snag roles that other actresses were gunning for, sometimes ruthlessly. Take Joan Crawford, for instance. She and Norma were in a not-so-subtle battle for the spotlight. Joan once said, "How can I compete with Norma? She sleeps with the boss." It wasn't just Joan, though. Myrna Loy, another MGM star, also felt the sting of Norma's influence. Loy believed she lost roles because Norma had first dibs on the juiciest scripts. Norma wasn't just sitting around waiting for opportunities to fall into her lap, though. Oh no, she hustled. She even went so far as to commission provocative photos of herself to prove she could handle sexier, edgier roles like the lead in The Divorcee, a part that won her an Oscar. That move was bold, but it didn't win her many friends. Other actresses saw it as her playing dirty, using her privilege and connections to bulldoze her way to the top. And here's the kicker: Norma wasn't apologetic about any of it. She knew the power she had, and she used it shamelessly. To her, it was survival in a cutthroat industry, but to those on the losing end, like Joan and Myrna, it looked more like sabotage. Norma's career eventually faded, but her reputation as a savvy and selfish player in Hollywood's golden era is still part of her legacy. Was she a villain, or just a smart woman making the most of her circumstances? Depends on how you look at it. Either way, she left her mark, and not everyone was happy about it. Mae West. When you hear her name, you think of Hollywood's original queen of sass and self-promotion. Mae wasn't just a star, she was a force of nature, strutting through the entertainment world like she owned it. And honestly, she kinda did. But here's the thing. While Mae was bold, brilliant, and completely unforgettable, she had a way of making everything revolve around one person: Mae West. Mae was all about Mae, and she didn't care who got overshadowed along the way. In interviews, she'd dominate the conversation with her razor-sharp wit and trademark double entendres, barely giving anyone else a chance to shine. Co-stars, directors, they were just supporting characters in the Mae West show. She once said, "I never loved anybody as much as I loved myself." And let me tell you, she lived by that motto. On set, Mae insisted on having complete control over her lines, her wardrobe, and even how her scenes were shot. Directors found her exhausting, and co-stars often complained they were reduced to mere props. One infamous story involves a young Carrie Grant, who got his big break in She Done Him Wrong because Mae thought he was hot. She literally plucked him out of obscurity and made him her leading man, but only because he made her look good. May even wrote most of her own scripts, which sounds impressive until you realize they were mostly vehicles for her to deliver one-liners and look fabulous. If a scene wasn't all about her, she'd either rewrite it or refuse to shoot it. Her co-stars? They were lucky if they got a word in edgewise. But here's the thing about May. She didn't care if people thought she was selfish. In fact, she leaned into it. She famously said, "I'm not afraid of criticism. I gave up that fear long ago." To May, being selfish wasn't a flaw. It was a survival strategy in an industry that chews people up and spits them out. So, love her or hate her, Mae West made Hollywood play by her rules. Was she selfish? Absolutely. But she was also a trailblazer, proving that a woman could run the show and own it without apologizing for a second. Marilyn Monroe. She had the looks, the charm, and that breathy voice that made her an icon, but behind all the glamour was a woman who didn't always play nice. Sure, Marilyn seemed like the sweet, shy girl next door, but in reality, she could be manipulative, selfish, and frustrating to deal with. Marilyn had a way of making everything about her, especially when it came to relationships. She charmed men with ease, but many of them, from Joe DiMaggio to Arthur Miller, felt like they were used as stepping stones or props to maintain her image. Marilyn craved adoration, and if she wasn't the center of attention, she'd find a way to turn the spotlight back on herself. She had a knack for keeping people hooked on her vulnerability, but some insiders felt it was all part of her act, a way to control those around her. On set, Marilyn's behavior drove directors and co-stars up the wall. She was notoriously late, sometimes by hours, leaving entire crews waiting while she finished getting ready or dealt with her personal dramas. Directors like Billy Wilder, who worked with her on Some Like It Hot, called her a nightmare to work with, even if the results were worth it. Studio executives lost money because of her delays, and she'd show up unprepared, forgetting her lines and making scenes take twice as long to shoot. What's wild is that Marilyn's antics weren't always accidental. Some believed she showed up late or caused chaos on purpose just to keep everyone off balance and ensure she remained the most important person in the room. She once said, "If I'd observed all the rules, I'd never have got anywhere." And honestly, that tells you everything you need to know. Still, Marilyn's charm was her secret weapon. Even when she upset people, they couldn't stay mad for long. She knew how to win people over with a pout or a laugh, and she leaned into that power whenever it suited her. Was she selfish? Probably. But in her world, where everyone wanted a piece of her, maybe it was the only way she knew how to survive. Lana Turner. She was known as the ultimate Hollywood glamour queen, famous for her beauty, charisma, and string of headline-grabbing romances. But beneath the shimmering exterior, Lana's personal life was a whirlwind of drama and questionable priorities, especially when it came to her role as a mother. Her focus on fame, love, and maintaining her image often left her daughter, Cheryl Crane, feeling like an afterthought in her life. Lana's love life was a tabloid dream, or nightmare, depending on how you look at it. She married 8 times to 7 different men, and each relationship seemed more chaotic than the last. Her constant search for love and validation often overshadowed her responsibilities as a mother. Cheryl, her only child, grew up in the middle of this storm, frequently shuffled to the side as Lana pursued her next romance or career move. The most infamous chapter of Lana's life, and the one that put her relationship with Cheryl under a microscope, was the demise of her abusive boyfriend, Johnny Stompanato, in 1958. Stompanato was a mobster who had been physically and emotionally abusive to Lana. One night, during a particularly violent argument between Lana and Johnny, 14-year-old Cheryl intervened. She grabbed a knife and stabbed Stompanato to protect her mother. The incident was ruled justifiable homicide, but it threw Cheryl into the spotlight and left her emotionally scarred. Many people blamed Lana for exposing Cheryl to such a toxic environment in the first place. Critics said Lana's pattern of prioritizing her own happiness, especially in her choice of volatile, dangerous men, put her daughter in harm's way. Cheryl later revealed that she felt neglected and isolated, living in the shadow of her mother's glamorous yet chaotic life. She described how Lana's obsession with her public image often left her feeling like an accessory, not a priority. Even after the Stompanato tragedy, Lana continued to focus on maintaining her movie star persona, often at the expense of her relationship with Cheryl. Their mother-daughter bond remained strained for years, with Cheryl struggling to find her own identity outside of Lana's shadow. Lana's story is a complex one. On the one hand, she was a woman navigating a male-dominated industry, doing whatever it took to stay on top. On the other hand, her relentless pursuit of fame and love left behind a trail of emotional wreckage, with her daughter paying the steepest price. It's a classic case of Hollywood glamour hiding a much darker reality underneath. Gloria Swanson. This woman wasn't just a Hollywood actress. She was a powerhouse. In the silent film era, she ruled the screen with her dramatic flair, extravagant wardrobe, and larger-than-life persona. But behind all of that, Swanson had a reputation for doing whatever it took to get ahead, even if it meant stepping on a few toes or breaking hearts along the way. Swanson's ambition was unmatched. She wasn't content with being just another actress. She wanted to be the star. And she wasn't afraid to manipulate the people around her to climb higher. One of the most talked about examples was her relationship with Joseph P. Kennedy, father of future President John F. Kennedy. Kennedy wasn't just her lover. He was also her financier, helping to fund her lavish lifestyle and her failing production company. Swanson benefited greatly from the relationship, but when the financial fallout came, Kennedy walked away relatively unscathed, while Swanson's career took a hit. Critics argue she used Kennedy as much as he used her, making their affair a textbook case of mutual manipulation. Professionally, Swanson had a way of alienating people. She was fiercely independent and demanded creative control over her projects, which wasn't common for actresses at the time. While her drive was admirable, it didn't win her many friends in the industry. Directors and producers often found her difficult to work with because she insisted on doing things her way, even if it caused friction on set. Her personal life was just as messy. Swanson married 6 times, and her relationships often ended in scandal or bitterness. She seemed to view her partners as stepping stones, prioritizing her career over building lasting connections. Her third husband, French aristocrat Henri de la Falaise, was a particularly dramatic case. Their marriage gave her an air of European sophistication that elevated her status, but it ended when the glitter faded, leaving yet another broken tie in her wake. By the time she starred in Sunset Boulevard, her iconic comeback role that mirrored her own life, Swanson's reputation as a self-serving, fiercely ambitious star had already been cemented. In many ways, her performance as Norma Desmond was more autobiographical than anyone realized. Was Gloria Swanson a villain? Not exactly. She was a woman in an unforgiving industry, fighting for control of her destiny. But her relentless ambition often left others hurt, discarded, or disillusioned. To some, she was a trailblazer. To others, she was simply ruthless. Tallulah Bankhead. If you thought the luxurious lifestyle and fame of old Hollywood was all about prim and proper behavior, Bankhead proved you wrong. She was loud, brash, and lived life on her own terms, often at the expense of everyone around her. Bankhead's reputation for wild behavior was legendary. She was known for her heavy drinking, drug use, and a string of fiery affairs that were as scandalous as they were public. But what really set her apart was her complete lack of a filter. She wasn't afraid to speak her mind, and when she did, it was often sharp, biting, and at times cruel. Her sharp tongue was both a weapon and a shield. Bankhead had a knack for making ruthless, cutting remarks about everyone, from co-stars to directors and even her own family. She once told a fellow actress, "I don't care what you do as long as you don't do it in the street and frighten the horses," a line that perfectly summed up her unapologetic nature. She would go out of her way to make people uncomfortable, whether by mocking others' looks or questioning their intelligence. It wasn't that she was insecure, quite the opposite. She just didn't care about anyone else's feelings. Her cruelty extended beyond just words, too. On set, Bankhead was known for being difficult to work with, often causing trouble during shoots. Directors found her hard to control, and she frequently showed up late or in no condition to work, thanks to her partying habits. Yet somehow she managed to still get roles, largely due to her outrageous charm and undeniable screen presence. Bankhead's personal life was just as turbulent. She had multiple love affairs, some with famous men and women, but never seemed to form lasting connections. She used people as disposable objects to satisfy her own needs, whether it was attention, companionship, or just a wild night of fun. For her, relationships were more about entertainment than genuine emotional connection. Yet, despite all the chaos, Tallulah Bankhead became a cult figure, beloved by some for her outlandishness and celebrated for living a life that most could only dream of in terms of freedom, albeit with consequences. She didn't give a damn about social norms or expectations, and while many found her antics tiresome or even cruel, others admired her boldness. She lived life on her own terms, and damn the consequences. In the end, Tallulah Bankhead was more than just a Hollywood star. She was a chaotic force of nature, a person who didn't care what others thought, and who would rather burn bridges than play nice. In a way, she was the perfect reflection of an industry that often valued the appearance of perfection over the messiness of real life. Barbara Stanwyck. She had a reputation for being a master at playing tough, no-nonsense characters on screen, but it seems she took a bit of that tough exterior into her personal life, too. Stanwyck was all about self-preservation. She knew how to build a career and maintain an image, but she also had a knack for cutting ties with people when they no longer served her interests. She wasn't the type to keep people around just for the sake of it, whether it was friends, co-stars, or even family. If someone no longer had a role in her life, they were quickly shown the door. There was no room for sentimentality in Stanwyck's world. Her fiercely private nature didn't help her popularity in Hollywood circles either. While other stars might bask in the spotlight and engage with their colleagues or fans, Stanwyck kept her distance, often keeping to herself or her closest circle of people. She had a strict keep your business to yourself policy, which sometimes made her seem aloof, standoffish, or even unapproachable. This detached nature didn't endear her to some of her co-stars or those working closely with her. Despite being a beloved and respected actress, she often isolated herself on set, leaving others to feel like they didn't have a real connection with her. There was a certain coldness to her, especially when it came to personal relationships. She had 2 marriages, both of which ended badly. The first to actor Frank Fay was rocky, marked by infidelity and tension, and after their divorce, Stanwyck's relationships with men were often seen as transactional rather than emotionally fulfilling. Stanwyck's approach to relationships wasn't just about keeping things private. It was about control. She was known for playing the role of the hard-nosed, calculating woman in many of her films, but it seems that role extended off-screen too. When she felt someone was a threat to her career, her personal space, or her privacy, they were quickly cut off. It wasn't about being mean. It was about protecting her territory, her image, and her career from anything that might cause her harm. Though many admired her for her unmatched acting talent, her emotional detachment and self-preserving nature left a trail of broken ties in Hollywood. While she was deeply respected for her work and known for being a professional on set, she wasn't the kind of person who would stick around for the long haul when it came to friendships or anything that didn't directly benefit her. Stanwyck's legacy is filled with glowing accolades for her skill, but her personal story is one of cold pragmatism and calculated decisions. She wasn't afraid to burn bridges if it meant advancing herself or protecting her space. Bette Davis. She was raw, unapologetic, and fiercely determined to maintain her star status no matter what it took. But in her relentless pursuit of stardom, Davis wasn't exactly concerned with how many bridges she burned or who got offended along the way. In fact, she seemed to almost revel in her reputation for being tough, demanding, and sometimes downright cruel. Her famous feuds and sharp tongue were as much a part of her legacy as her Oscar-winning performances. One of the most legendary and most vicious rivalries in Hollywood history was the one between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. Their feud, which started in the 1930s, reached new heights when they were cast as the leads in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane in 1962. The two actresses couldn't have been more different, and their animosity went beyond mere professional competition. Davis once said, "She's a bitch, but she's my bitch." That pretty much sums up the animosity between them. There was no love lost, only cold, calculated contempt. The stories from the set of Baby Jane are legendary. They would constantly try to one-up each other, sabotaging each other's scenes and playing psychological games behind the scenes. It wasn't just on-screen drama. It was real, personal, and filled with spite. But Davis didn't reserve her sharp tongue for just one person. She was known for cutting people down, colleagues or not. She didn't care if she offended anyone with her direct and often hurtful criticisms. Directors, co-stars, and even studio heads could find themselves on the receiving end of Davis's biting remarks. She was a woman who demanded perfection from herself and everyone around her, and if you didn't measure up, you were fair game. If you couldn't take the heat, you were quickly discarded. It wasn't about making friends for Bette. It was about making sure she stayed on top, no matter the cost. Davis's famous outbursts and public criticism didn't make her popular in Hollywood, but they certainly kept her in the conversation. She was known for her bluntness and her refusal to play the game the way the studio system wanted her to. While many stars of the time were busy towing the line and maintaining a squeaky clean image, Davis made it clear she was going to do things her way, even if it meant stepping on a few toes along the way. Her story is one of fierce determination, but also one marked by a trail of offended colleagues and damaged relationships. Davis wasn't afraid to ruffle feathers if it meant maintaining her status as one of the greatest actresses in Hollywood, and while that made her unforgettable, it also made her a polarizing figure. In the end, Bette Davis proved that in the cutthroat world of Hollywood, it wasn't enough to just be talented. You also had to be willing to fight, even if it meant losing a few friends along the way. Joan Crawford. Here's what you may not know. Joan Crawford is one of the most infamous stars in Hollywood history, but not for the reasons most would expect. While she was adored by millions for her glamorous roles behind closed doors, Crawford's life was a storm of manipulation, control, and a relentless desire for success at any cost. Crawford was known for putting her career above everything else, family included. She often seemed to view her relationships, especially with her children, as mere extensions of her public image, which she worked tirelessly to maintain. But her personal life was far from ideal, and it wasn't long before rumors began to swirl about how she treated her family, especially her children. In her later years, her adopted daughter, Christina Crawford, famously penned a memoir called Mommy Dearest, in which she accused Joan of severe emotional and physical abuse. The book portrayed Crawford as a cold, controlling mother, and the revelations were shocking. Christina described Joan as a woman who expected perfection, punished her children for minor transgressions, and was a tyrant behind closed doors.
When Helen Mirren first started her career, one could tell that she may have potential to be a star and icon in Hollywood.
Please welcome to the stage Dame Helen Mirren.
But as soon as she plunged in, Helen silenced all doubters, not just to her talent, but her amazing range and flexibility when it comes to the roles she took on. Some of them proud and authoritative, and others just plain shocking. Beatty in Hussy, No doubt, Helen Mirren has incredible versatility. At the start of her career, her portrayal of Beatty in the 1980 film Hussy stands as a fascinating testament to her acting prowess. After earlier notable performances in the 1976 film adaptation of Hamlet and the controversial Caligula in 1979, Mirren took on a character that would further solidify her status as a captivating screen presence. Set against the backdrop of a high-class London cabaret, Mirren's character, Beatty, makes a living as a prostitute, a profession that adds layers of complexity to her role. Her on-screen chemistry with John Shea, who plays Emery, her technician boyfriend, creates an intriguing dynamic. The tension that arises due to Beatty's profession adds depth to the narrative, giving viewers a glimpse into the complexities of their relationship. While Hussy might not be hailed as a cinematic masterpiece, it's Mirren's performance that elevates it beyond its shortcomings. Her portrayal of Beatty is nothing short of captivating, and she breathes life into the character with a smoldering intensity. The enigmatic allure she exudes not only draws in the characters within the film, but also ensnares the audience in its magnetic pull. Critics and fans alike were entranced by Mirren's portrayal in Hussy. Her ability to convey a wide range of emotions from vulnerability to strength was lauded by many. Critics also recognized that her presence transcended the limitations of the film's plot, making it a memorable experience. Mirren's future Oscar-winning performances were foreshadowed in this role, as her talent shone brilliantly even in a film that might have otherwise gone unnoticed. In Hussy, Mirren's Beatty is a character who defies expectations and challenges stereotypes. Her performance tells of her ability to transform even the most unconventional roles into memorable cinematic moments. Beatty's smoldering look and Mirren's remarkable acting skill create a character that leaves an indelible mark on the audience's memory. Now, admittedly, Hussy, as a movie, was sort of a hit and miss, but many of the earlier viewers believe that Helen Mirren's portrayal of Beatty is undoubtedly one of the film's redeeming qualities. She was loved for her ability to immerse herself in the character and convey its complexities while also being creative and improvising where necessary. Beatty's presence in the film brought to life by Mirren adds depth and intrigue, making Hussy a noteworthy entry in Helen Mirren's impressive filmography. This role was just one of many in her career that showcased her ability to surprise and captivate audiences, foreshadowing the many accolades that would later come her way. Tanya Kerbook in 2010. 2010 was the sequel to Stanley Kubrick's iconic 2001, A Space Odyssey, and is often regarded as a cinematic enigma. The film is so profound that many find a hard time believing the film exists. Released nearly 2 decades after the original masterpiece, where 2010 continues the epic journey into space, picking up the story 9 years after the mysterious failure of the Discovery 1 mission. In this ambitious follow-up, a band of explorers embarks on a mission to Jupiter, aiming to unlock the secrets of the cosmos. A huge contributing factor to the mesmerizing effect of 2010 is the cast, and although it included major talents like Roy Scheider and John Lithgow, it's Helen Mirren who shines brightly in her role as Captain Tanya Kerbook. Mirren's portrayal of this Russian character adds a layer of depth and intrigue to the film. As the commander of the Leonov, Russia's spacecraft tasked with investigating the mysterious failure of Discovery 1, Mirren's character holds a tremendous responsibility. Not only must she navigate the complexities of space exploration, but she also finds herself at the center of enormous political tension back on Earth. Mirren's performance as Captain Kerbook is nothing short of steely determination. She embodies the role with an authoritative presence that resonates throughout the film. Her convincing Russian accent lends authenticity to the character, immersing viewers in the tension-filled world of space exploration and international politics. Critics and audiences alike were captivated by Helen Mirren's portrayal in 2010. Her ability to convey the weight of leadership, the intricacies of command, and the challenges of diplomacy in the vastness of space was met with acclaim. In a film filled with scientific marvels and existential questions, Mirren's performance was a welcome surprise of just how versatile and talented she is. Mrs. Tingle in Teaching Mrs. Tingle. Helen Mirren's unexpected portrayal of Mrs. Tingle in the 1999 dark comedy Teaching Mrs. Tingle is true evidence of her remarkable range as an actress. This role is arguably the most surprising entry on her extensive list of performances. In the same year that earned her an Emmy Award for her portrayal of Ayn Rand in The Passion of Ayn Rand, Mirren took on the role of the vindictive history teacher at the center of this darkly comedic tale. In Teaching Mrs. Tingle, Mirren's character, Mrs. Tingle, becomes the nemesis of Lee Ann Watson, brilliantly played by Katie Holmes alongside Luke Cherner and Jolynn Jordan. Mirren's presence in this film is a departure from her usual roles, and she revealed feeling thrilled when Williamson thought of her for the part. Mrs. Tingle is undeniably the highlight of the film, with Helen Mirren delivering a performance that strikes the perfect balance between exaggerated dark comedy and the nuanced manipulation of a seasoned academic. Her portrayal of this formidable character is both wickedly funny and chillingly convincing. Mirren's ability to infuse depth into Mrs. Tingle's character makes her a standout in a genre not typically associated with her acting repertoire. Critics and audiences were intrigued by Mirren's unexpected turn in Teaching Mrs. Tingle. Her ability to embody the role of a strict and vengeful teacher while adding layers of complexity to the character earned her praise. The film itself may have been a dark teen flick, but Mirren's performance elevated it to a new level, making it a memorable and unique entry in her list of performances. In a year that saw her shine in diverse roles, she added an unexpected twist to her filmography with this character. Mirren's ability to tackle the challenging aspects of Mrs. Tingle's persona, from dark humor to academic manipulation, showcases her immense talent and surprising flexibility. Dominique in Raising Helen. In the world of dramedies, there's one film that showcases both heart and humor, and that's Raising Helen, directed by the legendary Gary Marshall. At its heart, the film revolves around Kate Hudson's character, Helen, who unexpectedly finds herself faced with the daunting task of raising her sister's 3 young children after a tragic loss. But what adds an unexpected twist to this tale is Helen Mirren's unforgettable portrayal of Dominique, Helen's no-nonsense boss and the formidable head of a renowned New York modeling agency, bearing her name as its illustrious namesake. Mirren's moments in the film may be fleeting, but they leave an indelible impression. As Dominique, she channels the essence of high-powered fashionistas, reminiscent of the Anna Wintours of the world. Her character exudes authority and sophistication, creating a fascinating contrast to the challenges that Helen faces in her newfound role as a guardian. Much like her commanding presence as Tanya Kerbook in 2010, Mirren once again makes a significant impact, even in a film that was somewhat less favored in Gary Marshall's otherwise illustrious filmography. Her performance adds a layer of complexity to the narrative, offering a glimpse into the glamorous and cutthroat world of high fashion, which serves as a backdrop to Helen's journey of unexpected parenthood. In Raising Helen, Mirren's Dominique becomes a symbol of the larger-than-life personalities that populate the fashion industry. Her character's elegance and no-nonsense demeanor are the perfect foil to the film's more emotional and familial moments. While Raising Helen may not have achieved the same level of acclaim as some of Gary Marshall's other works, it's Mirren's presence that elevates it and makes it a noteworthy addition to her own impressive role collage. In the film, her character adds a touch of glamour and sophistication to its narrative, and her commanding presence is a stark contrast to the challenges faced by the main character. Mirren's performance is a standout in a film that may have had its share of critics, but benefits greatly from her presence, making it a unique and memorable entry in her career. Queen Elizabeth in The Queen. Perhaps one of the greatest performances by Helen Mirren is her captivating portrayal of Queen Elizabeth in the film The Queen. This role no doubt stands as a testament to Mirren's extraordinary talent, earning her both critical acclaim and an Academy Award. In The Queen, directed by Stephen Frears and released in 2006, the narrative unfolds against the backdrop of a pivotal moment in British history. The film centers on the aftermath of Princess Diana's tragic death in 1997, a moment that shook the world and sent ripples through the British monarchy. Amidst this emotional maelstrom, Helen Mirren steps into the regal shoes of Queen Elizabeth II, and it is nothing short of a cinematic triumph. Mirren's embodiment of Queen Elizabeth II is nothing short of mesmerizing. From her poised demeanor to her impeccable delivery of the Queen's nuanced emotions, Mirren brings this iconic monarch to life in a way that is both authentic and captivating. She captures the essence of a woman who has spent her entire life in the public eye, a figurehead of stoicism and duty, but who also grapples with her personal feelings and the shifting tides of public opinion. One of the film's most compelling aspects is the exploration of Queen Elizabeth II's response to Princess Diana's death. Mirren masterfully conveys the Queen's initial reluctance to address the public's outpouring of grief and her eventual realization of the need for a more compassionate response. The transformation is a testament to Mirren's ability to portray a character's growth and evolution on screen. Critics and audiences were unanimous in their praise for Helen Mirren's portrayal of Queen Elizabeth II. Her performance transcends mere impersonation. It's a deeply empathetic and nuanced depiction of a complex historical figure. Mirren's ability to humanize the Queen while maintaining her regal stature is a testament to her acting prowess. In the end, the role not only earned her an Academy Award for Best Actress, but also solidified her status as one of the most revered actresses of her generation. Her portrayal of Queen Elizabeth II is a captivating blend of artistry and authenticity, making it one of the standout moments in her illustrious career. Victoria Winslow in Red. In the midst of this high-octane action, Helen Mirren steps into the shoes of Victoria Winslow, Frank's former wet-work agent, and a character that showcases her versatility in a way few could have predicted. Mirren's portrayal of Victoria Winslow is nothing short of fantastic. With a backdrop of gunfire and espionage, she brings a level of sophistication and wit that adds depth to the ensemble. Her ability to seamlessly transition from roles in historical dramas to high-stakes action flicks is a testament to her extraordinary range as an actress. In fact, Helen Mirren's role in Red was so well received that she eagerly campaigned to reprise it 7 years later in Red 2. Her return to the franchise was met with enthusiasm from fans who couldn't get enough of her in the high-octane world of retired CIA operatives. The success of Red even prompted discussions about a third installment in the series back in 2013. The fact that such discussions were even on the table is a testament to the enduring appeal of Helen Mirren in these action-packed popcorn flicks. By every ramification, the Red series stands as a testament to the unexpected joys of cinema. Who would have thought that a retired, extremely dangerous crew comprising Hollywood icons would become a box office sensation? Yet it did, and much of that success is owed to Helen Mirren's captivating portrayal of Victoria Winslow. Her ability to shine in high-octane action films, coupled with her undeniable talent, cements her status as an actress who can excel in any genre and ensures the series remains a beloved part of her diverse filmography. Nyra in The Owls of Ga'Hoole. Nyra, with her striking red marks between her eyes, was a character who demanded more than just a visual presence. She required a voice that would breathe life into her cunning and ambition, and Helen Mirren delivered that in spades. Every word that escaped Nyra's beak was not merely dialogue. It was a symphony of emotions, an aria of ambition, and a ballad of wisdom. Helen's portrayal of Nyra was a testament to her ability to use her voice as a finely tuned instrument of acting and entertainment. But what made Nyra stand out from the characters Helen had portrayed before was the unique kind of poise that the character demanded. Her character wasn't just a dominating force, she was a commanding presence that left an indelible mark on every scene she graced. Helen's portrayal of Nyra was not about physicality or grand gestures. It was about the subtle nuances of her voice, the way she could convey power, cunning, and complexity through the medium of animation. Now let's talk about how the producers knew they had found the perfect fit in Helen Mirren for the role of Nyra. You see, casting Nyra wasn't just about finding a famous name. It was about finding an actor who could capture the essence of this enigmatic character. Helen's reputation as a versatile actress who could tackle a wide range of roles made her an appealing choice from the outset. When the auditions for Nyra began, it became clear that Helen Mirren had a deep understanding of the character. Her ability to convey the layers of Neera's personality through her voice was nothing short of extraordinary. The producers saw in her the rare combination of talent and experience that could bring Neera to life in a way that would captivate audiences of all ages. And as the film unfolded, it became evident that their intuition had been spot on. Helen Mirren's portrayal of Neera not only dominated the scenes but also elevated the entire movie. She breathed life into an animated character, making Neera a memorable figure in the pantheon of animated cinema. Queen Elizabeth II in the audience. Helen Mirren starred in the 2013 production of The Audience, and it was simply mesmerizing. This gripping drama, set against the backdrop of Buckingham Palace, explores the weekly meetings, known as audiences, between Queen Elizabeth II and her prime ministers. The production made its debut in London's West End, gracing the stage at the renowned Gielgud Theatre. In The Audience, Helen Mirren undertook the monumental task of portraying Queen Elizabeth II. It's a role that demands not only exceptional acting prowess, but also a deep understanding of the complexities of a monarch's life. And true to her reputation as a master of her craft, Mirren delivered a performance that left audiences in awe. Mirren's portrayal of Queen Elizabeth II is nothing short of extraordinary. She effortlessly captures the regal bearing and dignified presence of the monarch. But it's not just the outward facade. Mirren delves into the character's inner world, providing insight into the challenges, joys, and sorrows that come with a lifetime of royal duty. The heart of The Audience lies in the interactions between Queen Elizabeth II and her prime ministers, a roll call of political giants spanning the decades. Mirren's ability to seamlessly transition between the different eras of her reign is a testament to her versatility as an actress. Whether she's engaging in witty banter with Winston Churchill or navigating the complexities of her relationship with Margaret Thatcher, Mirren's performance is a masterclass in character portrayal. The Audience garnered critical acclaim, with reviewers and audiences alike hailing Helen Mirren's performance as Queen Elizabeth II. Her ability to convey the weight of history, the challenges of leadership, and the personal moments that define a monarch's life is truly remarkable. It's a role that demands depth and nuance, and Mirren delivers on all fronts. In the end, Mirren's performance is a captivating journey into the world of a monarch who has witnessed decades of political change and personal growth. It's a role that showcases her versatility and cements her status as one of the greatest actresses of our time, both on the stage and on the screen. Dean Abigail in Monsters University. Despite being an animation, in the whimsical world of Pixar, where monsters under the bed become the stars of the show, the legendary Helen Mirren joined the cast, lending her formidable talents to the animated realm. Mirren took on the role of Dean Abigail Hardscrabble, a character that would send shivers down the spines of both the animated student body and the audience. As Dean Hardscrabble, Mirren embodied the essence of intimidation. She portrayed the chair of the university's esteemed Scarer program, a position that demanded respect and inspired fear in equal measure. With her dragon-like appearance and a presence that could send chills down your spine, Mirren's character was every bit as legendary as the university's reputation. What added a layer of intrigue to Dean Hardscrabble was her impressive backstory. She held the all-time scream record, a feat that only added to the aura of awe and dread surrounding her character. Mirren's performance made it all too easy to believe that this character had earned her place in the Monster Hall of Fame. One of the remarkable aspects of Monsters University was its ability to appeal to both children and adults in the audience. Mirren herself praised the film for its wide-ranging appeal. Her portrayal of Dean Hardscrabble added a touch of sophistication and gravitas to the animated world, proving that even in a realm of colorful monsters and playful antics, there's room for a character who really knows her business. Her involvement in Pixar's Monsters University was a delightful addition to her diverse repertoire. It showcased her ability to captivate audiences of all ages, even in the realm of animation, as well as adding a depth and a touch of gravitas to a character that would have been right at home in a monster's nightmare. It's a testament to her versatility as an actress, proving once again that Helen Mirren can shine in any role, no matter how unexpected or fantastical. Queenie Shaw in The Fate of the Furious. the Fast and Furious franchise. In the 8th installment of this iconic franchise, The Fate of the Furious, a new character roared onto the scene, and she was none other than the indomitable Helen Mirren, poised to leave her mark on the adrenaline-pumping saga. Picture the Shaw family, notorious for their intimidating presence, with Jason Statham and Luke Evans at the helm. Now imagine someone even more formidable, and you've got Helen Mirren, a vision of fierceness draped head to toe in cheetah print. Her entrance into the Fast and Furious universe was nothing short of electrifying. The story of how Mirren joined this high-octane ensemble is as intriguing as the franchise itself. It all began at a party where franchise lead Vin Diesel found himself face-to-face with the legendary actress. In a moment that would change the course of the film, Mirren expressed her desire to be a part of this action-packed world. The script for the next installment was already greenlit, but Diesel, ever the orchestrator of epic moments, decided to pull some strings. "She got written in," he declared with a grin, ensuring that Mirren's formidable presence would grace the franchise. While her role in Fast and Furious may have been brief, Helen Mirren made sure her impact was anything but. As the matriarch of the Shaw family, she exuded a level of authority and power that sent shockwaves through the film. Her character was a force to be reckoned with, and Mirren's portrayal left audiences in awe. In the midst of high-speed chases, explosive action, and gravity-defying stunts, Helen Mirren added a touch of class and gravitas to the Fast and Furious universe. Her cameo was a reminder that in this world of muscle cars and adrenaline rushes, there's always room for an acting legend to make her formidable presence known. Helen Mirren's appearance in the 8th installment of the Fast and Furious franchise was a moment of cinematic magic. Her journey from a chance encounter at a party to becoming an integral part of this adrenaline-fueled saga is a testament to the allure of the franchise. Mirren's role, however brief, left an indelible mark, proving once again that in the world of Fast and Furious, unexpected surprises are part of the thrilling package. Click this video to watch the sad death of another epic personality in Hollywood, Donna Douglas.
When it comes to Hollywood sweethearts, so many ladies are on the list, but none of these actresses were quite like the amazing Carol Wayne. There was more to her than met the eye, and men from all over the world were drawn to her for reasons beyond her physical beauty. The matinee lady effect. It's the ultimate example of why men were drawn to her. She wasn't just another pretty face. She had this magical blend of innocence and sensuality that was downright magnetic. She'd walk onto the Tonight Show set with that dazzling smile, playing this sweet but slightly ditzy character who seemed completely unaware of how jaw-droppingly gorgeous she was. That mix of naivety and bombshell energy? Men couldn't resist it. Her flirtation was never over the top. It wasn't aggressive or intimidating. It was playful. It was the kind of teasing that left men grinning, wondering if there was a wink hidden behind her big doe-like eyes. And then you'd have Johnny Carson, cool as ever, setting her up for these hilarious double entendres. The chemistry between them was electric. Johnny would toss out a sly line, and Carol, with perfect comedic timing, would deliver a somehow innocent and suggestive response. It was pure magic. But here's the thing. She owned that character. Men watching at home saw her as the ultimate fantasy, a woman who was stunning, funny, and approachable. She didn't come across as untouchable or overly polished like some other stars of her time. Instead, she felt like someone you'd dream about meeting at a party, the kind of woman who'd laugh at your jokes and make you feel like the most interesting guy in the room. And let's not forget how her presence amplified Johnny Carson's humor. She wasn't just there to stand and look pretty, she was a comedic partner. She'd roll with the jokes, often playing the oblivious foil to Carson's quick wit, and men ate it up because it made her seem even more endearing. She was the bombshell with a heart and a sense of humor, and that's a rare combination. Men didn't just want to look at her, they wanted to be around her, and she was a classic Hollywood beauty. When you think of the ultimate 1970s bombshell, she fits the picture perfectly. Her striking blonde hair was the kind of golden cascade that turned heads wherever she went, effortlessly glamorous without looking overdone. But her hourglass figure? It was pure old Hollywood, the kind of silhouette men dreamed about and women admired. And then there was her smile, radiant and warm, with just the right amount of playfulness to make you feel like she had a secret she might share, but only with you. What set Carol apart from many other beauties of her time was how she embodied the idealized look of the era while still feeling relatable. She didn't have the icy, untouchable vibe of someone like Grace Kelly or the overpowering appeal of Raquel Welch. Carol was glamorous, yes, but in a way that felt down to earth. Her beauty wasn't intimidating. It was approachable. She looked like the kind of woman you could take to a fancy dinner and still joke around with afterward. Compared to her contemporaries, she struck a balance that was rare. Marilyn Monroe before her was all about mystery and seduction, while 1970s stars like Farrah Fawcett leaned more toward fresh-faced, sporty allure. Carol, on the other hand, seemed to exist in this perfect middle ground, effortlessly sexy, but never over the top. She carried herself with an ease that made men feel like they might actually have a chance with her, even if she was light years out of their league. Her look was so iconic because it wasn't just about her features, it was about her presence. When she walked into a room or appeared on screen, she didn't just attract attention, she held it. That mix of timeless beauty and an inviting charm was exactly what made Carol Wayne stand out and why she remains such a memorable figure from that golden era of television. Her magnetic personality. Her warm and friendly personality made her truly unforgettable. People who worked with her often described her as kind, approachable, and genuinely down-to-earth qualities that set her apart in the often cutthroat world of Hollywood. Unlike some stars of her era, she didn't put on airs or treat people like they were beneath her. Instead, she had a way of making everyone feel at ease, whether they were a co-star, a crew member, or a fan. One story that keeps popping up is how she treated everyone on set with the same level of respect and kindness. From assistants to producers, people would recall her stopping to chat, flashing that famous smile and making them feel seen. She had this knack for breaking the ice in a way that felt natural, even in high-pressure environments. For someone who radiated star power, she was remarkably humble. Johnny Carson, for one, seemed to really appreciate her easygoing nature. While he was known to have a sharp wit and sometimes a prickly demeanor, Carol's warmth helped create that effortless chemistry they shared during their sketches. She had a way of rolling with his jokes and never taking herself too seriously, which audiences loved. That same ability to laugh at herself made her even more endearing. She wasn't just another pretty face, but someone who could laugh along with the audience and with herself. There's another layer to her personality that made her relatable. Despite her fame, Carol was known to struggle with self-doubt and insecurity. Instead of hiding it, she let glimpses of that vulnerability show, and people loved her all the more for it. It made her human, someone you could root for, not just admire from afar. At the end of the day, Carol Wayne wasn't just someone men wanted to be with, she was someone everyone wanted to be around. Her genuine kindness and ability to connect with people made her as unforgettable off-screen as she was on it. Her playful humor. While she's best remembered for her comedic turn as the matinee lady on The Tonight Show, Carol showed time and again that she was far more than a one-note actress. Her ability to step into different roles, from drama to light-hearted comedy, left a lasting impression on audiences, and men, in particular, couldn't get enough of it. In the early stages of her career, Carol appeared in a variety of TV shows and films that showcased her range. She wasn't confined to one genre. For instance, she had roles on TV series like I Dream of Jeannie and the Man from UNCLE, where she played everything from a glamorous guest star to a more dramatic, mysterious character. These appearances were proof that she could adapt to any role, never letting her beauty overshadow her acting chops. In films like The Happy Hooker Goes to Washington and The Big Bus, Carol also showed her talent for both comedic and slightly risque roles, playing characters with humor and charm, but also depth. Men admired how effortlessly she shifted between roles, whether she was delivering deadpan comedy or adding a bit of dramatic weight to a scene. It was this ability to adapt that made her even more captivating. She wasn't just playing a part. She was bringing something unique to each role, keeping audiences interested and engaged. What really stood out was Carol's ability to balance her glamorous blonde bombshell persona with a more subtle, nuanced performance. In one instance, she played a more serious role on The Rockford Files, where she wasn't just eye candy, but a complex character with a storyline that required genuine acting. Men who had originally admired her for her comedic timing and beauty were now impressed by her depth and range. It wasn't just about looking good, she was showing them that she could handle more than just the dumb blonde stereotype. This versatility earned her a lot of respect. Men didn't just admire her for her beauty anymore, they saw her as someone with serious acting ability. She could walk into a comedy scene and have everyone in stitches, then shift into a more serious moment without missing a beat. That's what made her stand out in Hollywood, especially when so many actresses were pigeonholed into one type of role. Carol never allowed herself to be typecast, and men admired her for that. She was more than just the girl next door or the bombshell. She was an actress who could hold her own no matter the role. Her versatility made her even more appealing because it showcased her as an all-around woman, someone who could light up a screen with her humor, dazzle with her looks, and still hold the audience's attention when the story got serious. This rare combination is exactly why men admired Carol so much. She wasn't just a fleeting star. She was a true talent who could thrive in any role, and that kept her interesting long after the screen went dark. Her real vulnerability. Men were drawn to this aspect of her personality because it gave her an authenticity that made her feel real, like someone you could connect with on a deeper level. Behind her dazzling smile and glamorous image, Carol struggled with self-doubt and insecurity, something she often kept hidden from the public eye. Those who knew her best, though, recognized that she was not immune to the pressures that came with being a public figure in Hollywood. She sometimes questioned her looks, her worth, and her abilities, which, ironically, made her even more endearing. She wasn't perfect, and she didn't pretend to be. She showed a side of herself that was unguarded, and that's what made her more approachable and human in the eyes of men. What really made this vulnerability stand out was how she balanced it with the image of the glamorous star. When Carol stepped onto a stage or appeared on a talk show, it was clear she had a command of the room, but behind that public persona was a woman who longed for reassurance, just like anyone else. That contrast between the poised, on-screen bombshell and the more uncertain woman off-camera made her even more appealing. It was as though she wasn't trying to live up to an unattainable ideal. Instead, she allowed herself to be real, and that authenticity was something men appreciated. Men found this vulnerability refreshing because it's rare to see a woman in Hollywood, especially one as beautiful and glamorous as Carol, who didn't constantly project a sense of invincibility. Instead of hiding her flaws, Carol allowed them to be seen. It was this self-awareness, this ability to acknowledge her insecurities, that made her feel more grounded, more like someone you could actually get to know and understand. And yet, despite her vulnerability, she still commanded attention, and men found that balance irresistible. There's something deeply attractive about someone who is secure enough to embrace their imperfections. Carol's ability to show a softer, more introspective side while still radiating warmth and beauty is what made her so magnetic. She wasn't just a star, she was a person with depth, someone you could relate to beyond her on-screen roles. This vulnerability wasn't always visible in her work, but it shone through in the little moments. The way she interacted with her co-stars, her willingness to share a laugh at her own expense, or the times when she let her guard down just enough to reveal that she wasn't perfect. It made men admire her more because she wasn't just a fantasy or a flawless figure. She was someone who had her struggles, just like anyone else, and that made her more real and more lovable. Her captivating eyes. Carol Wayne's eyes were, without a doubt, one of her most captivating features, and they played a huge role in why men were so drawn to her. They were extremely beautiful, and had an incredible depth that could convey multiple emotions at once. In every scene, her big, expressive eyes spoke volumes, often saying more than words ever could. Whether she was in a comedic skit, a dramatic role, or just being herself on talk shows, Those eyes became a window into her soul, making her instantly magnetic to anyone who watched. Her eyes had this perfect combination of innocence, mischief, and allure. They could look wide and innocent, like a sweet girl next door, and then, in the next moment, flicker with a hint of mischief or flirtation, making it clear that there was more to her than met the eye. In comedy sketches, her eyes were often used to her advantage. When she'd deliver a deadpan line or play the naive character, those big eyes would often give away her true understanding of the joke, creating a subtle but playful tension that made her even more endearing. In moments of romance or flirtation, her eyes were mesmerizing. They could convey a sense of longing or vulnerability, drawing men in with an unspoken promise of mystery and possibility. It wasn't just about how they looked, it was about how they made you feel. Carol's gaze had a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room, even if you were just watching her on TV. There was an intimacy in her eyes that made every scene more engaging. Her eyes were also a part of her charm in real life. When you hear people talk about Carol Wayne off-screen, many mention how her eyes would light up when she smiled or how they could convey warmth and kindness in an instant. Men admired how those eyes seemed to reflect her personality, genuine, approachable, but also undeniably captivating. What made Carol's eyes stand out even more was how they contrasted with the glamour and the polish of Hollywood at the time. While many actresses were made up to perfection, Carol's eyes told a different story. They were natural, full of life, and full of expression. They gave her an authenticity that set her apart from the typical Hollywood look. It wasn't just her beauty that men were drawn to. It was the way her eyes told stories, whether it was through the innocence of her gaze, the hint of mischief behind it, or the allure that made her impossible to look away from. Signature presence. There was something about the way she carried herself that commanded attention without needing to be the loudest or the most in-your-face person in the room. Whether she was on The Tonight Show next to Johnny Carson or in any scene, Carol had this quiet but powerful magnetism that made her stand out instantly. It was a rare quality, one that didn't rely on constant chatter or over-the-top gestures. Instead, it was all about the subtlety of her demeanor. First, there was the way Carol used her expressions. Her face could convey so much with just a slight arch of her eyebrow or the faintest smile. She didn't need to overact or exaggerate. With one look, she could go from playful to serious, from innocent to mischievous, and it always felt completely natural. Men were drawn to that. It wasn't the loud, dramatic gestures they were used to from Hollywood starlets. Carol's ability to draw attention through just a flicker of expression was fascinating. Then there was her posture. Carol always stood tall with grace, yet there was something incredibly relaxed about the way she held herself. She didn't seem stiff or forced. There was a confidence in the way she stood that came off as effortless. When she was in a scene, whether she was delivering a joke or just sharing a moment with Johnny Carson, she always seemed comfortable in her own skin. Her confidence didn't scream for attention, it simply was. Men admired that kind of natural, unshakable presence. She didn't have to prove anything. She simply existed, and that drew people in. Even when she was standing next to someone like Johnny Carson with his larger-than-life personality, Carol's presence was undeniable. She didn't need to be the center of attention to steal the scene. Just her standing there with her charm and grace made her magnetic. When she flashed a smile or tilted her head slightly, it was as if the whole room focused on her. She had this ability to make even the most mundane moments feel electric, simply because she was in the room. Men were drawn to this signature presence because it was different from what they saw in most Hollywood actresses of the time. While many were loud, flashy, or trying hard to be noticed, Carol had an ease about her that made you want to pay attention. It was as if she knew exactly how much to give, never too little but never overdone. She could be quiet yet commanding, subtle but striking, and that was part of what made her so unforgettable. Whether she was cracking a joke with Johnny or simply sitting in the background, Carol Wayne had a way of making every moment feel special just because she was there. Her quiet confidence. She didn't need to constantly remind everyone of her beauty or talent. She simply was beautiful and talented, and she carried herself with a quiet assurance that made her even more attractive. It wasn't the loud, attention-grabbing confidence often associated with Hollywood stars. Hers was more refined, more natural. Men loved that about her because it felt real. Carol didn't walk into a room and demand attention. She didn't need to. There was something about her presence that made you notice her without her having to say or do anything. Whether she was on The Tonight Show beside Johnny Carson or on set, she radiated an inner confidence that wasn't cocky or overbearing, but instead, it was a calm, collected strength that was magnetic. What made Carol's confidence so special was that it didn't come across as arrogance. She didn't flaunt her beauty or her success. She simply embraced it. While many stars in Hollywood could be seen trying to outshine everyone, Carol had a way of standing out without even trying. Her beauty was undeniable, but she never used it as a tool to overshadow others. There was an ease in the way she moved through the world, whether she was making a joke, sharing a moment with a co-star, or just sitting in the background. Men admired that effortless self-assurance because it felt grounded and authentic. It made her approachable rather than intimidating. Her confidence also made her incredibly charismatic. When she spoke, you listened, not because she demanded attention, but because there was something magnetic in her demeanor. She knew who she was and didn't feel the need to prove herself to anyone. It was a trait that made her even more appealing to men because it signaled that she wasn't just a pretty face. She had substance and an inner strength that didn't need to be broadcasted. It was the kind of confidence that made Carol feel like someone you could actually connect with, someone who was both strong and relatable at the same time. Men found that balance irresistible. Her ability to shine without overshadowing others, her self-assurance without arrogance. It was this quiet confidence that made Carol Wayne an unforgettable figure. Soft and compassionate. By every stretch of the imagination, she was someone who genuinely cared about others, and it showed in everything she did. Those who worked with her consistently spoke about how kind, thoughtful, and generous she was, both on and off the screen. This warmth made her someone you wanted to be around, someone you could talk to easily without the usual walls that come with fame. One of the things that stood out most about Carol was her ability to make people feel comfortable. Whether it was a fellow actor, a crew member, or even someone she met briefly, she had this way of making them feel seen and heard. She wasn't just nodding along to a conversation, she was fully present. That kind of attention to detail, the ability to make people feel important in an often fast-paced, impersonal industry, was something rare. Men especially were drawn to that. In a world full of superficial interactions, Carol's ability to be genuinely kind and compassionate was incredibly appealing. It was a reminder that beauty and fame don't need to overshadow who you are as a person. Carol's compassion wasn't just about being friendly, it was about her generosity of spirit. There are several stories of how she would go out of her way to help others, whether it was offering support to a colleague who was going through a tough time or just being a sounding board for someone in need. She didn't expect anything in return. She just had a natural instinct to care for the people around her. Men loved that quality because it showed depth. It was easy to admire someone for their looks, but it was the kindness behind those looks that made her unforgettable. She also had a softness in her approach to humor. While many actresses could be sharp or harsh in their delivery, Carol had a gentler way of getting laughs. Her comedic timing was flawless, but there was always an underlying sweetness in her performances. She didn't need to be biting or sarcastic to be funny. Her humor came from a place of warmth. That made her more relatable and human, which men found incredibly attractive.
One thing is true, the stars of the Golden Age knew how to have a good time. They were known for hosting some of the most famous parties of the era, with some of the top people in society in attendance. You could be sure to see all kinds of things at such parties, from overflowing booze to vices. While all of these are normal at parties, some of these Golden Age parties went too far and even made it into the news because of how scandalous they were. From the rumored orgies at Jane Mansfield's mansion to Fatty Arbuckle's deadly party, these 10 scandalous parties that took place in the Golden Age still shock people to this day. The Roaring Twenties Party. In the mid-1950s, America's power couple, Eddie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds, decided to host a party in their backyard, but this was not just any party. It was one that got people talking for a while. A good number of Hollywood couples threw parties in their homes during the Golden Age, but Eddie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds' 1955 party was said to be unforgettable. At the time, Eddie Fisher was known for his smooth and romantic chart-topping hits, while Debbie Reynolds, who was clearly smitten by the singer, was making waves as an actress. They both were at the peak of their careers in the 50s, and they were determined to keep working towards their goals. But every now and then, the couple loved to unwind and have fun by partying. Achieving such great things and getting famous in their 20s left them feeling fulfilled, and what better way to celebrate than to organize a party-themed Roaring Twenties? They wanted to enjoy their youth along with friends, and that was exactly what they did. They decided to transform their garage into a playroom as they set out to host one of the most exclusive parties in town. They invited some young stars like Tab Hunter, the poster boy for Teenage Dreams, and Leon Tyre, the charming actor. When the party began, everything seemed innocent, and the atmosphere was electric with the promise of a night to remember. But soon enough, it became obvious that this was not a regular party. It was a party where seemingly innocent young stars came ready to unleash their wild side. The party gave them permission to shed their public personas and reveal a wild side hidden from the prying eyes of the paparazzi. It was said that the party was not one for innocent eyes, as subtle glances turned into lingering touches, and the stars allegedly consumed all kinds of substances. From the pictures that circulated after the party, one could see that they all let loose and partied with reckless abandon. Most of the stars there were busy exploring their raw, untamed passion, and no one was left out of the fun. Only the people who attended the party truly know what happened that night, but rumors circulated that it was a bit too wild. No one expected it to turn out that way, especially because Debbie Reynolds and Eddie were known to have a wholesome image. MGM's Dark 1937 Party. The MGM's Grand Party in 1937 was an event that a lot of people enjoyed, but for one actress, Patricia Douglas, it turned into a night she desperately wanted to erase. According to reports, the party was organized in Los Angeles in honor of MGM's top salesman. There were already rumors about the strange things that the top men in the studio did behind closed doors, but not many people knew the extent of it. Before the party began, the studio brought the salesman in by train from different parts of the country, and it looked like it was going to be the most glamorous party of the year. The event was extravagant, with star-studded meet and greets, marching bands to lead the way, and even a fleet of motorcycle cops providing a grand entrance. There was a private rail car brimming with promise, booze, and lively conversations. To commence the ceremony, which was to take place at the famous Ambassador Hotel, MGM's Louis B. Mayer stepped on stage and gave a speech. But it was after the ceremony that the convention's grandeur took a dark twist. The centerpiece was a lavish party with the comedic brilliance of Laurel and Hardy and the mesmerizing Dandridge sisters. And there was an open bar, ensuring that spirits were as high as the Hollywood Hills. Yet, amid all the dazzle, Patricia Douglas, a dancer and movie extra, found herself in a nightmarish situation. She was one of 120 young women told they were destined for an on-location film shoot that evening. However, once they arrived, they realized they were trapped in an event with a sinister underbelly. It was said that the party was not a normal party, but a stag party. Several strange acts were rumored to have taken place on that night, but one of the most shocking was what happened to the young actress Patricia Douglas. As the night wore on, Douglas, amid the glitz and glamour, was allegedly targeted by a drunken salesman who not only forced her to consume alcohol, but also took alleged advantage of her. Never in her lifetime would she have thought that someone would do such a thing to her. She was devastated and shocked, but Patricia was not one to stay silent. She raised her voice and spoke out about what happened to her. She explained every detail, hoping to get justice. Unfortunately, the court was not exactly in her favor, not because she was lying, but because MGM allegedly made the story disappear. MGM didn't want the world to know that one of their best salesmen took advantage of an underage girl at a party they organized. This kind of scandal would have tarnished the image of the studio forever, so they used their influence to make the scandal disappear. Jayne Mansfield's Wild Mansion Party. Mansfield was a Hollywood star who defined the word wild. She was known for her fearless embrace of sensuality and glamour. Her figure-hugging outfits, her trademark blonde bombshell hair, and her smile were the weapons in her arsenal. She made sure the cameras loved her, and they sure did. But the wildness didn't stop at her looks. Jayne was a party animal, and her Hollywood Hills mansion was the backdrop for some of the wildest soirees that ever graced the hills. If you want to have an idea of what her parties looked like, picture a mansion in the Hollywood Hills with the stars twinkling overhead and the poolside lit up like a movie set. This was the setting for one of Jayne Mansfield's notorious house parties, a place where the word excess took on a whole new meaning. Excessive drinking, late-night revelry, and perhaps more were part of the package. There are rumors that these soirees weren't just about clinking glasses and polite chit-chat. The night would often take on a more uninhibited vibe, with guests participating in some, let's say, risque activities. There were rumors that her guests got involved in orgies during these parties. Some people even said she taped these acts for her guests. Yet it wasn't just about the parties. Jayne Mansfield was also known for her infamous affairs with some of the biggest names of the time, including Robert Kennedy and his brother John F. Kennedy. And it's safe to say that both Kennedys seemed to have a thing for the blonde bombshell. What happened behind the closed doors of Jayne Mansfield's house remains veiled in the allure of an era when stars lived larger than life. The Las Vegas Wild Party. Although the stars of old Hollywood partied a lot, these parties were mostly private and exclusive. Most times, only the stars in attendance witnessed firsthand what really happened in these parties. However, some of these parties made it to the tabloids because of the rumors that circulated about them. One of these parties was a 1950 Las Vegas party that played host to Montgomery Clift and an array of luminaries. On this particular night, a lavish party was about to unfold within the hallowed walls of a nightclub. The club was said to have imported several Hollywood stars for the party, which started off as a banquet. As the clock struck midnight, a parade of Hollywood's most illustrious names descended upon the club. Among the stars, the charismatic Desi Arnaz, the enchanting Lucille Ball, and the alluring Marlene Dietrich took center stage. The party started with a fancy dinner, but as the hours ticked by, things got wild. Photographs captured by the flashbulbs of the era's paparazzi showed a glimpse of the spectacle unfolding behind the club's closed doors. Rows of champagne glasses glistened in the dimly lit room, and laughter and chatter filled the air. But it was what remained hidden from those photos that ignited the most scandalous rumors. While it looked like the party was a casual get-together, these Hollywood stars wanted to do more than just meeting and sipping champagne. They wanted to let loose and do things that they would never be caught doing in public. Behind the scenes, there was a lot going on. Rumors started to spread about this party. People said there was lots of drinking and even some drug use. Even the stars that were known to be reserved and laid back unleashed another side. The club made room for these Hollywood stars to do whatever they wanted. There were no restrictions, but they did all these with the understanding that whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. From every indication, the party turned into something wilder than anyone expected. The stars, known for their perfect public images, took off their masks, let loose, and did things that were a bit scandalous. Errol Flynn's weird parties. Because of how wild and wayward Errol Flynn was as a child, his own mother had a hard time coping with him. As a result of this, their relationship was rocky, and she even referred to him as the devil for some weird reason. Interestingly, Errol grew up to become an adventurous man who did not live by the rules, and he became a party animal too. While his career was thriving, the actor was hosting all kinds of parties in his mansion, and most of these parties were scandalous. Almost every week, he came together with the likes of Clark Gable, David Niven, and Olivia de Havilland to party. It was alleged that some of these stars even enjoyed watching the wild animals at the back of Flynn's house. It was said that his mansion was a sprawling Spanish-style abode with hidden alcoves and secret passageways. It's the perfect setting for a night of revelry. Now it's said that the drinks flowed freely at Flynn's parties, and it wasn't just your run-of-the-mill cocktails. We're talking about top-shelf liquor and champagne that never seemed to run out. The laughter and the clinking of glasses were only rivaled by the sound of jazz music filling the air. As the night went on, the parties took on a life of their own. Flynn, known for his charm and charisma, was at the center of it all, regaling guests with stories of his adventures. But it wasn't just about conversation. His parties were rumored to have been wild, with guests dancing with abandon and whispers of romantic escapades in hidden corners of the mansion. But it was said that most of the guests who attended his parties preferred not to talk about what happened behind closed doors. It was almost like he turned his house into a place where his co-stars came and did wild things they wouldn't dare to do on camera. Hedda Hopper's unforgettable birthday bash. You've probably heard of some wild Hollywood parties, but this one was next level. Hedda Hopper was a prominent American gossip columnist and actress known for her influential role in the world of Hollywood journalism. The star-studded guest list read the likes of Judy Garland and Clark Gable, two icons in their own right, walking through the door. You can imagine the paparazzi bulbs popping like crazy, capturing every moment of what was shaping up to be a legendary night. The setting was as lavish as they come. We're talking about decorations that could rival the grandeur of a blockbuster film set. The champagne was excess, and there was an air of decadence hanging heavy in the room. However, the party wasn't just about mingling and sipping bubbly. It was rumored that the drinks were more than just cocktails. They were a one-way ticket to the wildest stories you'd ever hear. The excessive drinking was almost a given, and the night seemed to unravel into one for the Hollywood history books. The details of what exactly went down have been hushed over the years, reminding us that sometimes what happens in Hollywood stays tantalizingly behind closed doors. Joan Crawford's 1951 party. Let's step back in time to 1951 when the glamour of Hollywood was in full swing. A party to remember was in the works, and the star of the show, none other than Joan Crawford herself. The party took place at Stork Club, New York, but it was not your regular party. The Stork Club in Hollywood is a name that resonates with late-night revelry and the kind of extravagance that only old Hollywood could conjure. This was the place where Frank Sinatra crooned, Marilyn Monroe dazzled, and Humphrey Bogart owned the night. But that fateful night, Joan Crawford was the star of the night. Joan Crawford was known for being one of the most prominent and versatile actresses in the golden age of Hollywood. She was celebrated for her remarkable career, spanning several decades, and was renowned for her roles in films like Mildred Pierce, Possessed, and The Woman. The actress was also said to be a free spirit. When it came to partying, she did whatever she pleased. So on that starry night, Joan Crawford arrived at the Stork Club in grand style, ready to let loose and paint the town red. Rumor had it that the party took a wild turn. The party may have looked like an innocent gathering on the surface, but it was nothing close to innocent behind closed doors. After the party, photographs from the party began to circulate like wildfire and showcased Joan, the epitome of Hollywood elegance, letting her hair down, indulging in vices, and having the time of her life. It was a party where some glamorous stars had their moments of wild abandon. Sophia Loren's Los Angeles party. It was the year 1957, and Sophia Loren was throwing a party that was about to go down in Hollywood's history. If you've ever seen that iconic snapshot of Sophia eyeing Jane Mansfield's daring cleavage, well, that's just a sneak peek of what was in store that fateful night. The Paramount Pictures lot was buzzing with anticipation, all for the lady of the hour, Sophia Loren. You see, this wasn't your average soiree. This was an ode to glamour, star power, and a touch of wildness. Hollywood bombshells and the creme de la creme of Tinseltown's leading men were in attendance. The guest list read like a Hollywood Walk of Fame. But it wasn't just the people in attendance that caught people's attention. It was the things that they indulged in. If there was a queen of wild parties, it would be her. And guess what? She was there, right by Sophia's side. You just knew this night was about to take a walk on the wild side. The pictures from the party showed that Jane Mansfield had let go completely and was ready to have a good time. Behind those closed doors, things were heating up. People indulged in vices, puffing on cigarettes and sipping cocktails like there was no tomorrow. The air was thick with laughter, secrets, and that unmistakable Hollywood magic. People whispered about clandestine affairs, hidden rendezvous, and wild antics that made this party legendary. The truth is, it played out just like any other wild Hollywood soiree, excess, indulgence, and stories to tell for years to come. Sophia Loren's 1957 party was a night to remember, or maybe one to forget, depending on how much you indulged. The Wild Garden of Allah Party. The Garden of Allah was a grand stage for Hollywood's wildest rendezvous in the 1920s and 30s. This wasn't just a hotel, it was a swirling maelstrom of glamour, gin, and gossip. The things that happened in this hotel would shock anyone who wasn't part of Hollywood's elite. Imagine stepping through the hotel's grand entrance, the faint strains of jazz dancing in the air. The lobby, adorned with Art Deco splendor, was calm before the storm. Once you entered the heart of the hotel, the real revelry began. This was the place where the likes of Errol Flynn partied. Excessive drinking was practically a Garden of Allah ritual. The bartender, a maestro of mixology, concocted cocktails that could make Hemingway blush. As the night aged, so did inhibitions. The stars, whether Fitzgerald with his novels or Flynn with his swashbuckling charm, were no strangers to the allure of a well-filled glass. But it wasn't just the booze that flowed there, it was secrets and scandals too. You'd find affairs blooming amidst the potted palms, trysts concealed behind heavy velvet curtains. Stars whispered sweet promises under dim chandeliers, knowing full well that the dawn would uncover their transgressions. Gossip flowed through the garden like the wine in their glasses. In 1930, a notorious party at the Garden had F. Scott Fitzgerald at the center of a fiery altercation. He reportedly threw a champagne glass at his wife Zelda during a heated argument. The party didn't just end in a whisper, it made headlines across the nation. These parties were wild. The Garden of Allah was a melting pot of vice and virtue, an incubator for scandal and salacious stories. Imagine, in the 1920s and 30s, the world was emerging from the constraints of prohibition, and Hollywood had a thirst to quench. If you'd attended, you'd be swept into a tempest of cocktails and carousing, where the laughter was raucous, the music was intoxicating, and the shadows concealed more than you could imagine. It was a place where stars shone brightest and fell hardest, where Hollywood's secrets and sins were laid bare under the California stars. These parties were a whirlwind of decadence and debauchery, where the only rule was to indulge in every whim. The excesses of the Marion Davies Beach House. On the sun-kissed shores of Santa Monica in the 1920s, that's where you'd find the exclusive world of Marion Davies Beach House bashes, where the newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst and his mesmerizing mistress Marion Davies played host to extravagant gatherings that redefined the very essence of opulence. It was in this very house that a Hollywood star almost got shot. The scene was set against the backdrop of the Pacific Ocean, where golden sands met the blue horizon. The likes of Charlie Chaplin, the silent film maestro, and Greta Garbo, the enigmatic siren, were said to have partied there. However, chaos wasn't just a stranger, it was an unwelcome guest at these parties. The very extravagance that made these parties legendary also made them vulnerable to spiraling into mayhem. It wasn't unusual for the evening to end in a storm of shouting, shoving, and sometimes even broken glasses. For example, a notorious incident took place in 1924 when Hearst, known for his temper, allegedly pulled a gun on fellow guest Charlie Chaplin during an argument. It was the sort of drama that would give tabloids enough material to fuel their presses for weeks. If you were to attend such parties, you'd be a witness to history, a participant in the surreal world where excess was an art form. You'd see stars of the silver screen at the pinnacle of their fame, dressed in their finest, yet sometimes descending into the depths of chaos. You'd see the allure of Hollywood, but also the dark side of indulgence. These beach house bashes weren't just parties, they were a representation of the things that happened when Hollywood stars came together and decided to indulge in whatever they wanted to do. When the cameras were not present, these beach house bashes were a source of escape from the pressures of fame. These parties, as crazy as they seemed, were like a scene from Judy Garland's life. Giovanni Jackson, Daddy's Girl,